measures has gotten the case numbers down to this number of approximately 5% of total tests coming up positive, and opening up of the economy here has not been followed very closely with a surge of cases. So there is a way we can do this, but we have to work hard to make sure we get those case numbers down and then put in place the better monitoring so that we can keep those case numbers down.
Does there need to be more federal coordination? How concerned are you, or are you concerned about the testimony we heard yesterday from Dr. Fauci and others that they haven't really spoken with President Trump about the pandemic in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, there's an important role for the federal government in this. Control is at the local level. So states and cities need to enact the measures that they need to keep the virus under control based on the number of cases that they have. But the federal government can really muster resources and distribute resources much more effectively to those areas that are needed. And that's where the federal government really needs to step in to help bolster the capacity at the state and local level to do the testing, the contact tracing, to get PPE to people effectively. Those are the kind of things the federal government should be doing to help mitigate this epidemic.
Good, as always, to get your insights, Professor. Thanks for being with us this morning. Andy Pekos is Professor of Molecular Microbiology and Immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And as always, you can get the latest on the pandemic at Bloomberg.com/coronavirus or VRUSGO on the Bloomberg terminal. S&P futures down 28 points. Dow futures down 263. NASDAQ futures down 54. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Amazon is launching a new counterfeit crimes unit aimed at going after counterfeiters that violate the law and its policies by listing such products on the site. Amazon says the new unit includes former federal prosecutors, data analysts, and investigators. Toy maker Mattel is making some changes as it continues to cope with the fallout of a whistleblower claim, saying the company misled investors dating back to 2017. The company has hired a former Campbell Soup executive as its new chief financial officer to start sometime after July 30th. Futures point to a lower open this morning amid reports of increasing numbers of coronavirus infections in several states. Wall Street turned in a higher close yesterday for a second straight day this week. The S&P 500 gained 0.6%. The NASDAQ rose to another new record high. Dow futures this morning down almost 300 points. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine.
Different adapts, different overcomes, different keeps moving, different keeps thinking, different stays connected, different never stops dreaming. The University of Northampton invites you to a virtual open day for a taste of all the benefits of studying with us from this September. Search University of Northampton Virtual Open Days. It's the future, but different.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on,
boxing up goods and rolling them out,
shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets,
shorts for sunny weekends.
To brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not get road ready with a free car check worth £15 at all our stores and garages? With 25,000 weekly slots available at 700 locations, you can count on us to get you safely back on the road. Or even back beside the seaside. From MOTs to tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are falling as coronavirus infections surge in several states. Outbreaks are spreading in California, Texas, Arizona, and Florida. And here at the latest is Ed Baxter from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
California, which didn't reopen early, has reported another record number increase day to day. Texas has reported a record jump in COVID-19 cases. Arizona, as well as Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis says bars and restaurants have to abide by guidelines.
No tolerance for that. Just suspend the license, and then we'll move on.
And the nation's top infectious doctor, Anthony Fauci, says the numbers are troubling.
If those cases then infect people who wind up getting sick and go to the hospital, it is conceivable you may see the deaths going up.
And he says testing is one of the keys. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Ed, thank you. As infections spread, the government's eyeing another round of stimulus, and Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the details. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Nathan. The White House has privately discussed a $1 trillion stimulus package. Now, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin tells us a measure could come as soon as July.
We are beginning to discuss the different aspects of what another bill would look like. We want to take our time.
Secretary Mnuchin says a package is under serious consideration. In the meantime, he expects the economy to exit recession by year's end.
The economy had a very bad second quarter. I think you're going to see a spectacular rebound off the bottom in the third quarter.
Mnuchin spoke at day 2 of the Bloomberg Invest Global Conference. Today, the virtual event includes interviews with Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon and Bridgewater Associates Co-Chief Investment Officer Bob Prince. Catch those conversations coming up at 1 p.m. Wall Street time. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Okay, John, thanks. We also have news on the trade front. The U.S. is weighing new tariffs on more than $3 billion of exports from Europe. A notice published late last night says the U.S. Trade Representative wants to impose new levies on European olives, beer, gin, and trucks. The U.S. also wants to increase existing tariffs on aircraft, cheese, and yogurt. The move is related to Europe and America's fight over aircraft subsidies.
Futures this morning are moving lower with S&P futures down 27 points, Dow futures down 259, and NASDAQ futures down 54. The DAX in Germany is down 2.1%. 10-year Treasury up 2/32, yield 0.70%. The yield on the 2-year 0.19%. And NYMEX crude oil is down 1.8% or 74 cents at $39.63 a barrel. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. The latest world and national news straight ahead.
Okay, Karen, thank you. 6:33 on Wall Street. Let's get more on what's happening around the world now from Amy Morris. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Nathan. It'll be a while before we find out the results of some of yesterday's primary races, thanks to the deluge of yet-to-be-counted absentee ballots in New York, Kentucky, and North Carolina. Some races were easy to call, where voters rebuffed President Trump's preferences and nominated two Republicans that he had opposed to House seats from North Carolina and Kentucky. But in New York, it could be July before we learn the results of some high-profile races, including the 16th Congressional District. Challenger Jamal Bowman leading House veteran Elliot Engel 60% to 35%, 92% of those precincts reporting in. Veteran Manhattan Representative Carolyn Maloney is in a very tight race. She is leading her challenger, Suraj Patel, by 562 votes, and all of the precincts are reporting in. In other news, New York City, Long Island, and New Jersey are taking more steps toward reopening. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio's office says the city's beaches will officially open on July 1st. His press secretary tells the Wall Street Journal they have yet to make a decision on city pools. The city is also lifting restrictions on street parking as of June 29th, limiting alternate side parking. Long Island officially moves to phase 3 of its reopening today, with the return of indoor dining up to 50% capacity, and other personal services can reopen with masks and social distancing in place. In New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy says they're ready to reopen more recreation areas.
Outdoor amusement parks and water parks will be able to reopen next Thursday, July 2nd. This includes the rides on our boardwalks.
But there may be some warning signs in New Jersey, where Governor Murphy says the rate of transmission is starting to creep up, with more patients in critical and intensive care. He warns residents not to let a single day increase turn into a trend. Also in New Jersey, the state workers union has struck a deal with Governor Murphy to postpone annual raises and furlough workers to avoid layoffs.
I've always believed that bringing people to the table and negotiating in good faith leads to the best outcomes, and in this instance, it's the best outcome for the state, our workers, and our taxpayers.
That agreement is subject to employee ratification. The vote is expected later this week. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thanks, Amy. 6:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
All right, Nathan, play ball. There'll be baseball in 2020, although the two sides in that labor dispute that put off the start of the season never did come to an agreement. Commissioner Rob Manfred imposed the 60-game schedule. They did agree yesterday on final health and safety protocols. So next week, the resumption of spring training and opening day, either July 23rd or 24th, practices and games to be held at teams' empty home stadiums. The bad blood in that labor war does not bode well for future negotiations. The collective bargaining agreement ends after the 2021 season. Both sides can now file a grievance against the other. The players may contend that the owners did not bargain in good faith, tried to limit the number of games played. NASCAR calls it the best outcome possible. The FBI determined there was no noose at Talladega in Bubba Wallace's garage. It was a rope that was used to pull down the garage. It had been there since last fall. Wallace never saw it. He had been told about it by a crew member. The list of sports figures testing positive for coronavirus getting long. Kevin Durant, Patrick Ewing, Von Miller, Zeke Elliott, the coaches of the New Orleans Saints and Denver Nuggets, and add tennis legend Novak Djokovic, number one player in the world, has been in the news a lot. In April, Djokovic said he would not take a vaccine for the virus. In May, he complained about U.S. Open guidelines that would prevent him from staying in Manhattan and limit the number of people he could bring into the facility. Also testing positive, Denver Nuggets All-Star center Nikola Jokic, like Djokovic, a Serb. It will postpone his return to the U.S. for the NBA restart. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. 6:37 on Wall Street. How quickly will the economy rebound from the coronavirus pandemic? It has to be one of the most important questions for investors right now. Let's get the view from PIMCO. Bloomberg News editor-in-chief John Micklethwaite sat down with PIMCO CEO Manny Roman for a discussion on the recovery. They spoke at the Bloomberg Invest Global Conference.
You had a rather nice economic outlook quite recently, and you quoted the Richmond Fed President Thomas Barkin, where the economy rode the elevator down, but will have to climb the stairs back up. Is that the way you look at the recovery at the moment, that it's going to take longer and not be as rapid as some people hope?
It's correct. And I think there's a lot of things we know and there's a lot of things we don't know. But we expect real GDP to come back to the 2019 level by the end of 2021. And so there is going to be a lot of repair to be done in the system. There are sectors where the degree of predictability is very high in terms of what may happen. There are other sectors, retail, oil and gas, leisure, gaming, where there's a lot of things we don't know. As much as I would like to tell you that we can predict consumer behavior and how people are going to use anything from airlines to movie theater, we just don't know. And so when I think of the next 12 months, the error rate has to be much higher.
Coming back on that, you said there were some areas where you did feel fairly confident. What would be the areas where you sort of think you know what's going to happen?
Oh, I think the tech sector tells you everything you need to know about what has been predictable. And if I think back in the situation we were on March 15 and 16, if you had told us that the NASDAQ is nearly up 10% on the year, I would have been shocked. And so the recovery of the stock market has been nothing short of extraordinary. And tech companies have done remarkably well and seems to be, for the most part, totally unaffected by recent events.
But do you think those valuations are justified? I mean, surely you'd use the word surprising. That would sound as if you don't think tech stocks should be quite that high again.
Well, I'm hardly an expert on tech stock, but let's talk about credit for 1 second. I think that we've seen an enormous amount of issuance in the credit space from the end of March to today. And we have bridged the liquidity gap. Then there is going to be a long cycle where firms will need to think about solvency and their own businesses and what they can achieve. And if we know anything from history, we know it's a long cycle. It's a cycle where there'll be repair to be done and where some sectors are going to be profoundly affected and will need restructuring.
That was PIMCO CEO Manny Roman speaking with Bloomberg News Editor-in-Chief John Micklethwaite at the Bloomberg Invest Global Conference. Another story we're watching this morning. GNC has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The health and wellness company plans to sell itself and close as many as 1,200 of its 5,200 stores. GNC sells vitamins, supplements, and sports nutrition products. It has been struggling with a big debt load, and the coronavirus lockdown hammered store sales. S&P futures lower by 25 points. Dow futures down 244. NASDAQ futures down 46 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Debbie Hart is president of BioNJ, which represents the interests of more than 400 New Jersey-based biotech companies. She's also a strong voice in the biotech sector, supporting research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology. She sees NJIT as a valuable partner in attracting venture capital and biotech startups to the Garden State.
So the number one reason that companies come here to New Jersey for the biotech industry is for our talent. We estimate that there were about 30 biotech companies in the early 90s in New Jersey, about 80 in 1998. Today there are more than 400. And that growth continues, and it's come from every possible angle. Other countries, other states, they've spun out of our academic institutions as well as our biotech and our pharma companies, and we expect that growth to continue long into the future. And NJIT is a pipeline for talent, for companies, for entrepreneurs to do that important work.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuit.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Wednesday morning by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree, you get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most.
Hi, Mum.
From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. The Central London Congestion Charge, Ultra Low Emission Zone Daily Charge and the London-wide Low Emission Zone Charge are back in operation to help reduce congestion and pollution. The Daily Congestion Charge has now increased to £15 and operates from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. NHS Trust and care home workers can claim reimbursements. For more information, search TfL Driving. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
With coronavirus cases soaring in Arizona, President Trump held a mask-optional rally in Phoenix.
I'm thrilled to be in Arizona with thousands of patriotic young Americans who stand up tall for America and refuse to kneel to the radical left.
President Trump addressing an audience of young supporters at the Students for Trump rally, another mask-optional gathering at the Dream City Church in Phoenix, a much smaller venue than Saturday's rally in Tulsa. This just hours after the president commemorated the 200th mile of the new wall along the U.S.-Mexico border.
It's really foolproof. It's solid steel, it's rebar and concrete inside the steel.
I'm Nadia Romero reporting.
Authorities say the noose found this week in Bubba Wallace's NASCAR garage stall at Talladega had been there for months. The item, thought to be a garage pull, means federal charges aren't expected to be filed. I'm John Trout.
Pandemic information is coming at you so quickly, it's hard to react, never mind plan.
How bad do you think it's going to get?
How much more cutting do you need to do?
Here's help. Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks falling the most in a week and U.S. futures slumping as a resurgence in virus cases around the world sharpens concerns about the pace of the economic recovery. European shares added to declines on the news the U.S. is weighing new tariffs on $3.1 billion of exports from France, Germany, Spain, and the U.K. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. This update is brought to you by SEI. Crisis emphasized character and partnership. One mission, one community. SEI. Go to SEIC.com/ IMS. S&P futures down 24 points. Dow futures down 236. NASDAQ futures down 42. The DAX in Germany is down 2.1%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32nd, yield 0.70%. Yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.9% or 75 cents at $39.62 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.7% or $12.80 at $17.94.80 an ounce. The euro 1.1302 against the dollar. British pound 1.2526 and the yen 106.52. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy.
Karen, it could be July before we know the results of some key congressional races. Veteran Manhattan Representative Carolyn Maloney in a very tight race, holding on to a 562-vote lead over her opponent, Suraj Patel. Longtime House incumbent Elliot Engel of New York's 16th Congressional District still in second place behind challenger Jamal Bowman. Bowman now leading Engel 61% to 36%, with 92% of precincts reporting. And we do know Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has won her primary in parts of Queens and the Bronx. Joe Biden won the New York Democratic primary for president, and the latest New York Times Siena College poll shows Biden leading President Trump nationally 50 to 36%. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thank you, Amy. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. We're at 6:49 on Wall Street. Time to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories from the nation's capital include Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin saying another round of stimulus could be coming as soon as next month. The U.S. Trade Representative eyeing tariffs on more than $3 billion in European exports, and a Justice Department whistleblower saying politics were in play in reducing Roger Stone's prison sentence. Also making news, that poll Amy mentioned that may show serious warning signs for President Trump. Bloomberg News politics editor Kathleen Hunter joins me now. And this poll, Kate, comes from the New York Times and Siena College, 50 to 36%, as Amy mentioned, a 14-point advantage for Joe Biden, just about 5 months away from the election.
Yeah, and that's the tricky thing for Trump to have to potentially overcome. I think there's a sense in the White House, and this poll underscores it, that if the election were held today, Trump would be in a lot of trouble. The reality, though, is that the election isn't going to be held today. So whether Trump is able to, make some kind of a comeback and overcome that lead is still a very, very open question. However, certainly all the indications, particularly when you drill down on this poll and you look at some of the different demographic groups, the only group in which Trump is really leading right now is non-college educated white males, which of course forms a part of his base, but, isn't the kind of coalition that he's going to need to win. And so it raises some questions about whether he's going to really be able to overcome the gap that's developed here with Biden.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the number that really caught my eye from this survey, Kate, is the independent voter gap, a 39-point lead for Joe Biden. You see numbers like that, and you would think an incumbent would be doing more to broaden the base, but that is not what we're seeing by any stretch from President Trump this time around.
No, it really isn't. And I think that, that has been Trump's playbook from the get-go back in 2016 is, to kind of carve out this very specific base that he likes to appeal to. And I think he's very much been reprising that playbook in the recent weeks and months as he's looking ahead to his reelection. And I think that this poll underscores some of the potential pitfalls of that. If you don't look to broaden your base, and particularly at a time when people might have reticence about coming out to actual polling centers to vote, that could cause some severe problems, if your base is not particularly energized, and also just if, the independents do start to turn against you. I think the independents were much more split back in 2016.
And you got to wonder how things are going to play out in November if we start to see or continue to see more mail-in balloting. The president has raised a lot of questions about that. But when it comes to turning out voters, if most voters are going to be mailing it in, turnout seemingly would be a lot easier.
Yeah, seemingly it would be. I think the question, though, is whether or not, Trump's rhetoric ends up backfiring when it comes to bail-in voters, because I think the idea is, if he talks about some of the difficulties of coming to the polls, then, you might see people who have, who are even supportive of him, but might end up not casting ballots, be it by mail or in person. I think that's the risk that he runs up against here. And so, it's not, we're in a lot of different ways, Nathan. When we look at this election, we're in pretty uncharted territory. And I think this is one more example of a way in which that's true. And nobody really knows, including Trump, how exactly that's going to transpire on Election Day.
Our last 30 seconds here. It's also been interesting to see the Trump campaign sort of calling out Joe Biden for running sort of a low-key campaign and pushing for more debates. How could that affect things?
Well, I think that, it's been a constant criticism that Trump has had of the Biden campaign. And I think that, I think there's going to come a point in the election cycle where it might be a moment where Biden can kind of step up a bit and, look as though he is a bit more active on the campaign trail, but I don't think we're there yet. I think he's been trying to balance that with a lot of the fallout from the coronavirus, and I think for him right now, that's a smart move.
All right, Bloomberg U.S. Politics Editor Kathleen Hunter, thank you as always. And you can read more on Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg Terminal. Follow all the latest on Bloomberg Radio in Washington, Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 6:53 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report with John Tucker. John, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Karen. For 3 generations, Mount Vernon, New York-based Own Instruments has been producing precision machined parts. They make parts for the aerospace industry, including Virgin Galactic and SpaceX rockets. The pandemic has slowed orders considerably, so this small business is pivoting. Katrina Chapins, you and your husband, and your son run this small business. Now you're manufacturing a touch-free keychain device. What exactly is this?
So basically, it's a little handheld brass device. You can use it to open doors, pull down on handles to get into a storefront, push elevator buttons with the knob on the top of it. You can use it on a keypad in a grocery store, so that basically you're kind of not touching all of those things that everybody else in the world is touching as well.
What sort of demand have you had, or have you just started marketing this device?
I think it's a little too early to tell. It's myself and my husband that basically run the business. We kind of wear all the hats that are necessary to be worn in the shop. So we're kind of just at the beginning part of it. I've used some social media outlets, and it's gotten a great response so far. But, I feel like there's a much bigger market out there. It's just a matter of getting the time to really market it and put it out there for people, because I think it's really something that people would love.
Katrina Chapins of the Own Instruments. Thanks very much. And we're going to continue to bring you stories of small businesses trying to adapt and survive in this new environment every day at this time, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That's your Bloomberg Small Business Report for today. Karen.
All right, John, thank you. It is 6:55 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report. It's brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, providing industry partners with commercially focused research and innovation services through its New Jersey Innovation Institute. Learn more at njii.com. Now let's see what's happening in science, technology, engineering, and math. The Arctic is feverish and on fire, at least parts of it are, and that's got scientists worried about what it means for the rest of the world. The thermometer hit more than 100 degrees in the Russian Arctic town of Verkhoyansk on Saturday, a temperature that would be a fever for a person, but this is Siberia, known for being frozen. From January through May, the average temperature in north-central Siberia has been about 14 degrees above average, according to the climate science nonprofit Berkeley Earth. Mercedes and software maker NVIDIA say they will create a computing and artificial intelligence system for automated driving. It'll be rolled out starting in 2024. The German automaker and Silicon Valley tech companies say a main feature will be automated driving from address to address on regular routes. And who would have pictured this? Digital camera pioneer Olympus will sell off its imaging business. It's blaming the rise of smartphones for its exit from a business it helped to foster more than 2 decades ago. The camera business had been steadily shrinking over the past decade. And that's today's Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Now let's check the markets with S&P futures moving lower this morning, down 24 points. Dow futures down 237. NASDAQ futures down 47. The DAX in Germany is down 2.2%. CAC in Paris down 1.8%. And the FTSE 100 is down 2.33%. The 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.71%. And the yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil on the decline, down 1.8%, down 72 cents at $39.65 a barrel. And COMEX gold rising up 0.6% or $11.20 at $1,793.30 an ounce. The euro 1.1306 against the dollar. British pound 1.2518. And the yen this morning at 106.54. And Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influence. Different adapts. Different overcomes. Different keeps moving. Different keeps thinking. Different stays connected. Different never stops dreaming. The University of Northampton invites you to a virtual open day for a taste of all the benefits of studying with us from this September. Search University of Northampton Virtual Open Days. It's the future, but different.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
What we need to realize is that, we're going to be in a slow growth world for a very long period of time.
It's an urgently needed discussion now to think about how do we think about getting back to central bank independence.
The markets don't seem to have noticed that the number of new COVID-19 cases in the U.S. has gone up by 55% in the past week.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance with equity futures negative. We're live on Bloomberg TV and radio alongside Tom Keene, together with Lisa Abramowitz. I'm Jonathan Farrow, and Tom Keene, only one place to start this morning. The increase in infections beginning to test the tolerance of policymakers, both state and local, across several states in America.
John, it'll be fascinating to see how the White House and the president respond to it today. There is no question the mayors and the governors are responding. John, I'm not going to go into it at length here, but let me cut to the chase. Florida, Texas, and Arizona are where New York and New Jersey were 85 days ago. That's what you need to know. It's extremely important to understand, folks, that something's changed in the last 24 hours. This is, John, the story front and center today.
Yeah, the numbers are worrying. They're concerning, Tom. And Lisa, I'm not going to get excited about $3 billion of trade between the EU and the United States. This has got to be about the reopening process. Does it constrain policymakers' ability to carry on and push forward in states like Texas? And does it weigh on the confidence of both consumers and businesses alike?
You just nailed it. Consumer confidence, I think, is probably going to be one of the biggest drivers, and you're already seeing this anecdotally across the country. Meanwhile, we have economists trying to get their hands around just what this means. Coming up, one thing that I'm looking at 9 a.m. Eastern, we're going to get a projection from the IMF, their latest 2020 economic growth outlook. They already predicted the deepest recession globally in almost a century. We're expecting them to downgrade that forecast. Another thing I'm watching, 10:30. EIA crude oil inventories come out. They are expected to have built, which means that possibly there isn't as much demand as people had previously thought. And to your point about trade tensions, John, EU diplomats may decide to bar Americans from traveling to Europe for fear of catching the virus. Just shows how global this phenomenon is. We can't just tackle hotspots in specific areas. It really affects global trade, global travel, and global commerce.
Well, I've got skin in the game here, Lisa, so I'll be upfront about that, and I'll make it very personal. If my family in Italy can't come to America, why should Tom Keene be able to go over to Venice and cruise around the streets whenever he likes? So let's leave that one out there somewhere on the side. Tom, for me, the relationship between Europe and the United States is one thing. Let's talk about the relationship state to state in the United States of America right now. A couple of months ago, only a few months ago, there were states outside of New York worried about New Yorkers going into their states. That has flipped 180 in just a few months, Tom.
Well, it's flipped, but I love what you say, John, about the politics. And, of course, the New York Times Siena poll out earlier this morning with Vice President Biden with a 14-point lead over the president. Fine. But you're absolutely right about the blue state, red state dynamic in that, John. What I would suggest is Houston's going to run out of beds in X number of days. We need to focus right now on the pandemic and the medicine. And I wonder if the politicians, particularly at the White House, how they will adjust to that, not only in the coming days, but frankly, John, in the immediate morning and afternoon on this Wednesday.
Yeah, Tom, you're right. Hospital capacity in places like Harris County is something we've got to talk about later in the program. We'll talk about the politics too. We'll have just a mild move lower relative to some of the craziness we've seen over the last couple of months. We're down by 23 and off by 0.75%. We begin the program this Wednesday morning with someone who was constructive when others weren't, bullish when many were still bearish. Her name, Lisa Shallett of Morgan Stanley Wealth Management. Lisa Shallett, fantastic to catch up with you. And I will say out front, you have been right over the last couple of months. But over the last couple of weeks, that cyclical rotation has started to fade. There is a defensive bias creeping back into this market. What's the message for clients this morning, Lisa?
Yeah, look, I think that is something that investors are definitely grappling with. And to your point, we have seen, a defensive rotation, albeit on the one hand, people sustained by the fuel of the Fed. But on the other hand, buying things like gold, like utilities, like staples, leading this market. So, we have, articulated that we thought that the period, really from June through the end of the year was going to be a very volatile and trade range-bound market, and we're sticking with that. We still think there's opportunities to buy those cyclicals for what ultimately happens in 2021 and 2022, but we understand that we're in a very, very choppy, critical period here, and we're not surprised by this defensive rotation, and certainly it is validated by that news flow that Tom talked about. The pickup in the virus numbers are staggering in the last week.
Lisa, compared to where we were a couple of weeks ago, you sound relatively more cautious. I hope that's a fair characterization of where you stand. And I just wonder what's at the epicenter of that turn for you?
It's as I said, I think we are a little bit more cautious. Look, we're still very strongly in that range that we've talked about between 2,900 and 3,200. But as we look at, the spike in the COVID-19 cases, while we don't think that there's appetite, either human will or political will, to really go back to the style of all-out lockdowns that we saw in March and April, these are numbers that are going to cause people, local town cities, concern and stress. And again, to Tom's point, if you start hitting limits in certain cities and municipalities on their hospital capacity, they will have no choice but to once again restrict economic activity. And I think that that's kind of what you're seeing in the numbers. People get the joke, you can't fight the Fed, but they also worry that the only things that are going to work, in an environment where the recovery is very lumpy and impeded by the virus, may be, with those very defensive names.
Lisa Shelley, good morning. You've always been research-based, of course, with the acclaim of Sanford Bernstein and the wonderful black books and all that. You've always led with research first. What are you learning from the Morgan Stanley sell-side research team about this nation and its corporations? What is the spirit they're hearing, they're feeling going into the summer, into the mystery of the fall months?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things that we're debating is the extent to which companies are going to resume their capital spending. And so one of the reasons that we as a House, I think, have been somewhat more bullish than many, and why, our global economist and Chet and I, have stuck to this more bullish V-shaped recovery forecast, is because we are seeing a pickup in capital spending intentions. And that was something that I think earlier in the year was much more hotly debated. Now, a lot of that capital spending does, seem to be focused on technology and the cloud and, digital presence. But that's really, I think, where we still remain very bullish and constructive. That capital spending, can help sustain this recovery.
Lisa, we're going to be very lucky to have Chet Naya with us tomorrow, your colleague. A question coming up from a listener, Cliff Noreen at Mass Mutual, and this really goes to the angst of a lot of investors out there. Has the easy money been made? Can we just expect lower returns going forward?
Well, that's certainly our view. If you just look at the last decade, and we talk about this all the time. Over the last 11 years, the S&P 500, has compounded at close to 15% per year, which is 2 times normal. The corporate credit returns have compounded at 9%. That's about 3 times normal. And so if you look at this on any of, set of normalized metrics, either normalized earnings or normalized interest rates, this is a very expensive market. So in the eyes of a Robert Schiff type framework, we're looking at returns over the next 3 to 5 years that are going to be a lot more like 4 to 5%, not 7 or 8% that a lot of clients have historically expected. So certainly the Fed is throwing unbelievable amounts of ammunition at this. The federal government is doing its part on fiscal, but it's really hard to see, how financial assets, appreciate materially without us really getting into dangerous bubble territory.
Lisa Shallard at Morgan Stanley. Lisa, always appreciate your insight and perspective, and we thank you for your time this morning. Our best to you and the whole of the team over at Morgan Stanley. Tom Keene, one of the big bulls off the market bottom in the last couple of months, just starting to sound a little bit more cautious over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And of course, we've seen these huge gains. Let's call it up 40% as a general number. You're seeing some of that caution, John, this morning. I've been watching gold. Good morning, Dennis Gartman, with a call of the last 18 months on surging gold. John, 1796 on gold about an hour and 5 minutes ago. That's the Chicago GCI future as well. There's different ways to quote golds, folks. Like John quotes golds like LME London Gold, which is a different quote and a different price. It's too confusing for a Wednesday morning, John.
Tom, we've been quoting gold that way for quite a while, so let's just leave it there, shall we? Lisa Bramber says, it would be disingenuous of me to say that this market has been ignoring what's happening, because it has become a little bit more defensive. We've had 8 straight days of gains on the NASDAQ. We've seen mega cap tech start to outperform once again. That cyclical rotation that people got excited about coming into June has faded in a big way.
Big tech is still very much in charge, and it goes to the story that the equity market is not the economy. Right now, you've got the FanMag stocks, the Facebooks, Apples, Amazons driving the entire boat, and everything else left behind, John.
FanMag, that one brought to you by Lisa Brambert alongside Tom Keene. I'm Jonathan Ferro. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. I haven't forgotten that one, Lisa. In the equity market right now, we're down 20 on the S&P 500, negative 0.6%. Coming up next, we'll catch up with Kevin Cirilli and head down to Washington, D.C. from New York City this morning. Good morning. This is Bloomberg.
Now let's see what else is going on around the world. Here with the latest headlines is Amy Morris. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Tom. You've been talking about the coronavirus surge in the U.S. Let's look at some states where cases are on the rise in Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis there says the infection rate has climbed above 10%.
What we've seen, particularly over the last week, is a real explosion in new cases amongst our younger demographics.
And then there's Texas, where daily infections hit a record, with the state reporting more than 5,000 new cases. California reporting its biggest jump in cases, the 4th record day in the past week. Even New Jersey is showing warning signs.
The number of patients in either critical or intensive care was 307. Number of ventilators in use was 216. Each of these metrics is a slight increase from the day before.
Governor Phil Murphy says the rate of transmission in New Jersey is starting to creep up, and he warns residents not to let a single-day increase turn into a trend. It could be July before we know the results of some key congressional races. In New York, longtime incumbent Eliot Engel is trailing his challenger, Jamal Bowman, 61% to 36%, with 92 precincts reporting. In Manhattan, veteran Representative Carolyn Maloney holds a razor-thin 562-vote lead over her opponent, Suraj Patel, with all precincts reporting. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. This is Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seizechange.
knowledge, influential conversations.
Different adapts, different overcomes, different keeps moving, different keeps thinking, different stays connected, different never stops dreaming. The University of Northampton invites you to a virtual open day for a taste of all the benefits of studying with us from this September. Search University of Northampton Virtual Open Days. It's the future, but different.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
We are beginning to discuss the different aspects of what another bill would look like. We want to take our time because, number one, there's a lot of money we still haven't put out. And number two, we want to make sure whatever we do going forward is much more targeted to the businesses that are most impacted.
We want to take our time, perhaps not what some people wanted to hear. That was the Treasury Secretary, I'll get my words out, the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin, alongside Tom Keene. I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Abramovich. Let's get you some price action this morning, shall we? Equities with a bounce off the bottom, still down 21 on the S&P 500. We are negative 0.7%. Interesting to see equities down, but bonds not doing much at all. Treasury yields unchanged on a 10-year at 0.71%. And in foreign exchange, a quick snapshot at G10 for you. Euro dollar going nowhere as well. But Tom Keene, I think the focus on the next 30 days in Washington, the composition of the next fiscal stimulus bill that this administration puts together and agrees with the Senate and the House on.
I still think, John, it's all changed by what we're seeing with the virus. John, just so you know, I have yet to say Chancellor of the Exchequer correctly. I'm still working on that as well. I think you're right about the fiscal stimulus. I think it is malleable, to say the least. In charge of looking at its variability, our chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Cirilli. Kevin, how does this new surge in the virus, particularly in Florida, a key battleground state, even Arizona I can put in that group, but how does a virus in Florida change the next stimulus debate?
I think it puts pressure on Republicans to get some type of economic stimulus through before November. Look, President Trump has laid this out very clearly in public comments, Tom, that he made to reporters yesterday, saying that he is in favor of there being another round of economic stimulus. Now, that's going to open up some different divisions within the Republican Party, many of whom say that as states reopen, that's the best type of stimulus for them, especially as economists are now predicting there to be a stepped up recovery entering into the third quarter and the fourth quarter of this year, right around Election Day. But more broadly speaking, whether we're talking about infrastructure, whether it's Treasury Secretary Mnuchin suggesting that a second tax delay, filing delay, could be on the table as well, there are many different economic tools at the White House's disposal that could be factored in as we get closer to November 3rd.
The Democrats, though, have to have the up and up. I mean, let's take the stimulus debate and what Speaker Pelosi and Senator Schumer and others would do. You saw progressive victories in the primaries yesterday, and now you see a progressively shocking poll from the New York Times on Vice President Biden. The Democrats have to feel good. Why should they cooperate with stimulus with a Republican?
Well, exactly. And in fact, every Democratic strategist, Tom, that I speak with says that the Biden campaign wants to make this a referendum election against President Trump and not a choice election between the two candidates. It's why you're seeing the Democrats only agree to 3 presidential debates, one of which, by the way, was moved from Michigan to Florida because of COVID-19. This is the uptick, and Florida continues to make headwaves. Beyond that, in terms of that poll, that New York Times poll, which has Biden leading Trump by 14 percentage percentage points that just came out within the last 12 hours. This is definitely something that the Democrats feel at this point is theirs to lose. Yesterday, I spoke with a source on the vice president's campaign who said that in very clear terms, when they're going over strategy for how to continue through this summer, they really just want to get out of the way in this source's terms, in this source's words from the president, because of how he has stepped over himself in the past couple of weeks. From the president's reelection campaign, they look at the economic numbers. They look again at the projections of reopening, helping the economy, regardless of whether there's an uptick, and that the president is still receiving positive marks on how his handling of the economy has gone as potential seeds and a foundation to build on heading into the lead up to November.
Well, Kevin, let's get down to the state-by-state story. Let's get to Florida and talk about how Governor Ron DeSantis is handling things on the ground. Big question mark about how he's handling the reopening process at the moment. I just wonder how that's bleeding into the debate about who should be leading the country, Republican or Democrat, down in Florida.
You know, yesterday I spoke with former Congressman Patrick Murphy. He is a centrist Democrat who previously served and ran for Senate, lost to the current Senator Marco Rubio, who told me that the debate is alive and well in terms of the reopening, particularly of how senior citizens are being impacted in Florida. Florida, we all know, a crucial battleground state in elections and presidential elections. It was a state that the president carried in 2016, also a state that he has deep ties to, given Mar-a-Lago. However, we should note that the senior population, senior citizens, a crucial demographic for electoral politics in that state, and the president has really significantly taken a hit amongst senior citizens in the last couple of weeks. Still not too late for him to rebuild there. But also look at the Hispanic vote in that state, and that's why, again, COVID-19 is so important. Trade policy is so important, but the geopolitics of that region, whether we're talking about Venezuela and trade, also as important.
Kevin, I want to just get back to the big story in my mind, which is stimulus and further potential support for households. How much pressure will there be among legislators to re-up the unemployment benefits, the enhanced unemployment benefits, or possibly resend out some checks if there aren't official shutdowns, but you see slowdowns with a lack of confidence that people can go out and not get sick?
Well, Lisa, get this. I mean, you've got to your point precisely. Many of these states that are having the uptick, as Jonathan and Tom were saying, are red states. And so that's where the unemployment benefits debate really becomes so incredibly layered and textured, because many of the Republicans who are raising concerns about the economics of this are also staring down upticks in terms of that virus. So as this continues into the fall, and I do want to note that Dr. Fauci yesterday testifying before Congress saying that he is cautiously optimistic that a vaccine be in the market by the end of the year in the United States is a massive, massive sign of optimism for Dr. Fauci to say that. However, that's what's really weighing on Republicans right now, is a wait-and-see approach.
Kevin, thank you. I think we're all hopeful that we can advance the science over the next 6 to 9 months. But Lisa, it's a really important issue, the next move down in D.C. And for me, I said this yesterday, the idea that this administration wouldn't put together another fiscal stimulus package 4 or 5 months out from the election, for me, is unthinkable. It has got to come down to the composition of this stimulus package. Will it be offsetting lost income with more stimulus checks, or will it be all focused on the supply side, tax cuts to incentivize rehiring? That, for me, has got to be the big issue over the next 30 days.
And absolutely, Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin seemed to weigh in and push for that incentive to be rehired aspect of the benefits. Still a lot of questions about how quickly this will trickle into the economy at a time when there's still so many questions and the virus is spreading, John.
Questions we'll try and get the answers to over the next 30 days. From New York City this morning, good morning to you all. Alongside Lisa Abramowitz, together with Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, counting you down to the opening bell, 2 hours away and around about 5 minutes to. Equity futures still down 22 on the S&P 500. We are negative 0.7%. Coming up, Michelle Mayer of Bank of America Merrill Lynch, the head of U.S. economics. That's next on this program, live on Bloomberg TV and Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
What's the true value of your custodial relationship? Ben Harrison of BNY Mellon's Pershing explains.
As sophisticated investors demand more from their advisors, advisory firms, in turn, need to rely on their custodian to help them grow their complex businesses. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, supporting the rapid growth of RIAs is our #1 priority. We understand what it means to deliver true value to our clients who are looking for a custodian that is aligned with their best interest and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC.
This is a Bloomberg. For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
This is a message from the government. Some businesses are now able to welcome back their employees and customers. To keep everyone safe, it's important you follow government guidance and make your workplace COVID secure. Businesses should carry out COVID-19 risk assessments, put in place hygiene procedures, and help staff and customers keep a safe distance. Talk to your employees, listen to their concerns, and if possible, help them to work from home. Every workplace is different, but by following this guidance, you can get back to business safely and play your part in managing the risk of infection. Visit gov.uk/working safely for more information. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most.
Hi, Mum.
From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg TV and on Bloomberg Radio alongside Tom Keene, together with Lisa Abramovitz. I'm Jonathan Ferro. 2 hours away from the opening bell, here's your Wednesday morning price action as follows. Equities lower, a bounce off the lows though, still down 22 on the S&P, negative 0.7%. An 8-day winning streak on the Nasdaq coming into Wednesday. Record high and all-time highs on several of the big tech names. A defensive posture, if you want to call it that, as the mega caps start to outperform once again, and the cyclical rotation coming into June really stalls. Outside of equities in the bond market, not seeing the bid you might expect on a morning like this morning. Yields actually higher on a 10-year by almost a single basis point now, up to 0.72%. And just to round things out for you, Tom, in foreign exchange, the Swissy and the yen just about outperforming what we're seeing elsewhere. The euro slightly negative, but I've got to say muted price action across G10 this morning.
John, what do you see in Australia dollar? I looked at Australia dollar against U.S. dollar today. I looked at Australia versus renminbi and finally Australia versus yen, and it really shows a more optimistic tone, a better tone for Australia. Do you agree?
Seeing the Aussie right now in the session, Tom, just slightly weaker on my screen, and that's in line with the defensive posture that we've seen over the last 24 hours. Though certainly coming into June, we saw a lift, largely seen as a growth proxy in line with that cyclical rotation. That was where the Aussie was, but it's faded on my screen this morning, Tom.
There's no question it's faded. It'll be interesting to see, folks. That's something to watch. We hear that from many strategists as well. Right now, a really wonderful conversation on how we're framing our expectations forward. Michelle Meyer came to the attention of all of Global Wall Street with their financial modeling learned at Boston University. She did brilliant work for Bank of America on real estate, on the thinking of the underpinnings of the economy. She joins us now with Bank of America. Michelle, do the models work right now? Can you use conventional Michelle Meyer economics to look forward, or do you have to make it up as you go?
So I think what we've learned is that right now it's really important to do a bottoms-up exercise, a bottoms-up modeling, right? Because the shock is so sector-specific, and it's hitting the economy in many different ways. So think about it for jobs, for example. Probably the best way to forecast the path forward for the labor market and the unemployment rate is to think carefully about each major sector. How are retail jobs going to recover versus construction versus autos versus leisure and hospitality? And from that, you can then kind of add up and think about the big picture. But it's really important to look at the economy on a sector-to-sector basis right now.
I agree with that. In the partition of goods and services, we've seen goods disinflation and outright deflation at times. Do you suggest we will see service sector disinflation?
Look, this is a service sector shock. And you're right. Typically, it's goods that swings around a lot more. It's goods that tend to be the most vulnerable in a recession. But consider the consumer basket that we've seen in the past few months since COVID hit. People have been spending on durable goods. They've been spending on household appliances. They've been spending on autos. They've been spending on housing, and they haven't been spending on services. So the big demand destruction has been much more on services. Now, part of that comes back. It already is coming back upon reopening, but not fully. So the bigger price adjustments happen to services. I don't think you'll see outright deflation for broad services because the lodging component, the rental component in there is so broad, but we're going to flirt with that. And certainly many categories will be disinflationary and some will be in deflation territory.
Michelle, I'm going to steal from your research the three phases to all of this: the shutdown, the bounce, the recovery. You've talked about that bounce off the trampoline followed by a long climb up a rope. What are you learning from the bounce in the last month?
So, I think it's been stronger than maybe we would have anticipated. And part of that because the reopening was also earlier. So it's happened earlier. It's been strong. Consumer confidence has also picked up pretty meaningfully. So people also feel better about the world. There's clearly a desire to re-engage. That said, we're now starting to see very early evidence that things are leveling off, whether you look at it in terms of some of the high frequency data around consumer spending or small business openings from a variety of alternative data sources as well. Things are starting to kind of peak out, particularly in the states that are further along in the reopening process. So that tells us that next phase, and thank you for referencing those three phases, that next phase, the true healing and the recovery phase, we're starting to approach that. And that's going to be a much more challenging one in my view.
And Michelle, another challenging aspect here is the road ahead for housing. So far, we've seen amazing resilience. And I know this is one of your expertises dating back to 2005, 2006. And I'm wondering how long this can last if we don't see a further resurgence, especially since these are really being driven by mortgage rates at all-time lows.
Yeah, I think for housing, clearly the bounce has been incredible. Mortgage purchase applications at an 11-year high, new construction in particular benefiting the most because of the ability and the ease of searching for new construction versus existing. So mortgage rates, I think, is one factor. I think pandemic-related relocations is another factor, particularly out of urban areas. We've seen a lot of survey evidence to that effect. And then the demographics in general have been also favorable for housing. And this factor continues. So no, we won't expect this rate of growth to persist for housing. This is a sharp move up, given the situation. But the fundamentals are still pretty supportive. And if we could assume, and I think rightfully so, that interest rates are going to remain very low for the medium term, housing should continue to be underpinned.
Michelle, when you talk about the migration out of urban areas, is it going to leave zombie lands in some of the big metropolitan areas where there's an incredible amount of commercial real estate that won't necessarily get filled up, as well as residential that's been built up over the past few years?
So I think there will be some real consequences, of course, from these considerable shifts in population and where people want to live, where people want to work. But remember that they're short-term adjustments. In the end, urban centers are still vibrant. It's still where, the heart of businesses tend to lie. And these cities, particularly if you think New York City, they've been through these shocks over the years and they do bounce back. But I do think in the short term, we will be seeing a pretty meaningful adjustment. And if you think about even just the real estate market in some of the cities versus the suburbs, you're already starting to see some of that price convergence even before COVID hit. So the COVID shock just amplifies what was already underway in terms of the migration paths.
Michelle, there's a real worry that the infection increase of the last several weeks in several states, including Texas, is going to constrain the reopening process and start to hit the data. My worry, just looking at this from an economics perspective, is that the sequential improvement is bound to continue because places like New York are just starting to reopen. Right. Those forces will be really powerful. So the aggregate numbers over the next couple of months might still look strong. Do you think that could mask some fragility underneath? And we might miss what is happening in places like Texas, California, Florida, and elsewhere?
So you're absolutely right in that, when you think about the aggregate, you have the states that are further along in reopening where the viruses are rising. Things might be starting to slow there because just the length of time post-reopening, and now they have the virus concerns. But that's going to be offset by New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, moving into the reopening process, further along in the reopening process. So that's why it's absolutely critical to look at high-frequency data on a state basis. So we do a lot of work where we're trying to pick out the states, kind of bucket the states into the degree of reopening and track daily, weekly data in terms of understanding what economic activity is doing. And I think the most important indicator will be if the states that are further along in reopening that now have viruses on the rise, as you said, Texas, Florida, Arizona, I would put Arizona and South Carolina in that bucket. If you start to see behavior switch, even before there's government policies that demand that, right, just from personal preferences, I think that will be a very important sign.
What should we look for in the high-frequency data tomorrow morning at 8:30, the claim statistics?
So we love claims. Claims are a great piece of information, but they are flawed, and we've learned that. They're flawed in part because there's backlog issues, presumably, in terms of how to process these indicators. There's all different changes to the claims programs in terms of eligibility and criteria for receiving claims. So I think you need to take them with a grain of salt when you're translating those claims numbers into actual hiring and more important, firing really is what you're capturing with it. That said, the stickiness that we've seen from claims has been a sign of a reason to be concerned, because it tells you that there's still some firing going on, even when we know there's hiring from reopening. So for claims tomorrow, we do think we're going to see some modest move down in initial jobless claims remaining above 1 million. And continuing jobless claims, which is probably really one of the more critical indicators when you're trying to map this to an unemployment rate. I would imagine it comes down a bit, but I don't think we should expect these dramatic falls right now in claims. Certainly the data hasn't shown that.
Michelle Ma of Bank of America. Michelle, always enjoy hearing from you and the whole of the team. My best to you and yours. Michelle Ma there of B of A. Tom, speaking of the high-frequency data coming up Thursday morning, here's your median estimate on initial jobless claims, 1.335 million. Continuing claims, 20 million. These are numbers we want to see recover, and Tom, recover quickly.
Well, we have to, and this goes to rate of change versus level, and there's been some good charts this week, John, from houses looking at this outrageous million-plus level on claims and continuing claims out to 20 million. It's not the rate of change down. We have to jump condition down to a better place. That was assumed, John, much more 6, 8, 10 weeks ago, I would assume that assumption that we really improve rapidly is a little more fragile as we roll into July.
Well, let's be clear about something, Lisa. The bounce, as Tom points out, is inevitable as you reopen this economy, but the bounce is still important. The longer it takes to recover some of these lost jobs, whether they're temporary or permanent, they could become permanent. We could see real scarring. That's why the bounce and a quick improvement is really quite critical.
And that's why I keep coming back to consumer psychology. There was a study out of University of Chicago by Austin Goolsbee looking at how psychology was what drove the decline in economic activity, not the official shutdowns. And this does seem to be the driving feeling out there at a time when the virus counts are increasing.
With Lisa Abramowitz and Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, counting you down to the opening bell this morning. Good morning to you all. Still negative, down 24 points on the S&P 500, off by around about 0.8%. Heard on Bloomberg Radio, seen on Bloomberg TV. This is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. Coming up next, Mark Lehman of JMP Securities on the rally in big tech, and we'll get his thoughts on the IPO pipeline too. This is Bloomberg.
Now let's see what else is going on around the world. Here with the latest headlines is Amy Morris. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Tom. U.S. Infectious Diseases Chief Anthony Fauci and other health officials have not spoken with President Trump in more than 2 weeks, but they have talked to lawmakers. Fauci was on Capitol Hill warning Congress that the pandemic is not over.
We're now seeing a disturbing surge of infections.
We are seeing surges in Texas, California, Florida, and other states. Another one, Arizona, where President Trump held a rally yesterday. Despite the virus numbers, hundreds lined up to see the president during the campaign event in Phoenix, where he blamed Democrats for the economic slowdown because of the virus.
They are trying to do their best to keep the country shut down and closed because they'd love those numbers not to be good, but there's not a lot they're going to be able to do about it. Not a lot.
Meanwhile, former President Barack Obama helped raise a record-breaking $7.6 million from more than 175,000 individual donors in a grassroots fundraiser for Joe Biden. Obama warning Democrats against being complacent or smug about the presidential race.
There's nobody that I trust more to be able to heal this country and get it back on track than my dear friend Joe Biden.
Now, Biden is backed by 50% of registered voters. 36% support Donald Trump. That, according to the latest New York Times Siena College poll. The Senate is headed toward a standoff on an attempt to legislate an overhaul of U.S. policing practices. Democrats are ready to block debate on a Republican plan they say is too narrow. They want a stronger bipartisan bill. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has locked in a vote for today to begin debate on the GOP drafted measure. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios, this is Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Charlie Pellet. With no plans for minor league baseball this summer, some major league teams have asked newly drafted and undrafted players to sign contracts that begin in 2021 instead of this year. By pushing back the date of when contracts begin, teams would gain an additional year of control before the players could be eligible for minor league free agency. Novak Djokovic tested positive for the coronavirus after taking part in a tennis exhibition series he organized in Serbia and Croatia. The top-ranked Serb is the fourth player to test positive for the virus after first playing in Belgrade and then again last weekend in Croatia. His wife also tested positive. Djokovic has been criticized for organizing the tournament and bringing in players from other countries amid the coronavirus pandemic. And that's the Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Charlie Pellet.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Global news 24 hours a day.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Wednesday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
I do think the resiliency of our economy is such that we'll power through this, but it's not going to be a classic V shape. I would be more in the kind of check mark shape with some squiggly lines along the way, as the second part of that V is a little bit lesser dramatically sloped and more jagged.
Q-Song Lee there, the Carlyle Group co-CEO, speaking of Bloomberg Invest. I think he even laughed when he said that. Tom Keane, we have got no idea whatsoever what this recovery will look like on a chart in a few years' time.
And the pundocracy is truly off the charts as well, John. Absolutely extraordinary what we've witnessed. And for many, the collective memory goes back 2 quarters or maybe one product cycle for Apple, Amazon, and the other storied tech stocks. Why don't we speak to someone with some vintage? That would be Mark Lehman. He's with JMP, but that barely describes his heritage of working for Montgomery, founded by Tom Weissel, back in the days of San Francisco and Robertson Humphrey and the rest. And Mark, if there's one thing I know, you've seen trees going to the sky tumble down. What is the ultimate risk for our viewers and our listeners here of these tech stocks to the moon?
Well, you point out some good points. I mean, San Francisco was the birthplace of a lot of the great tech companies, and a lot of the ones that people are using every single day are ones that have been invented in this century, and there's some that have been invented 20 years before. I specifically talk of Apple. Apple, I always say, is the first tech company that really reinvented itself. If you remember back in 2002, it was trading for cash, and now it's the biggest company in the world. I think what you look for in these tech companies is great innovation, and they become part of your life. And all the companies that we talk about regularly have become more part of our lives, not less part of our lives during this COVID nightmare. And I think that's what you always want to look for. Are these companies adapting and innovating?
If you and I sat down with a beverage of our choice, Mark, no question what we would find is what gets us in trouble is arrogance. Do you detect arrogance within the leadership of these tech stocks?
It's a great question. I don't know if there's arrogance. In fact, if you put Tim Cook on a stage and interviewed him, I don't think you detect arrogance from him. Certainly there's some employees probably who work for him who do, but I don't think when you hear him talk or you hear about his concerns, I don't detect arrogance. I think there's some of that wafting through the halls of Facebook, and we've heard a lot about that over the last few months and frankly years about where they are with privacy and where they are with some of the things that they command. So there's different stories for these leaders, and each of them, I think things do flow downhill, from the top on down. And I think Tim Cook is a far different leader than Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg. And that kind of comes through, I think, when you hear them talk and hear about what they're trying to do.
Perhaps there is an arrogance, Mark. There is size, and big tech is getting bigger. You're seeing acquisitions. The shares of the FanMag stocks now account for more than a quarter, or about a quarter, of the overall S&P market capitalization. At what point will their size and scope become a liability, both from the regulatory standpoint as well as from consumers getting a little bit nervous about this?
I think I'm not sure we can define that, because I think if we would have asked the same question a year or 5 years ago, we would have far surpassed that. And we would have guessed that Congress or maybe some of the European regulators would have been far more aggressive about regulating them and about not permitting the kind of acquisitions that you're describing. And the exact opposite has happened. I mean, we've had investigations. Mark Zuckerberg spent more time in front of Congress than some of the people who work for Donald Trump, and nothing has happened, basically. Nothing has happened. Now we're starting to see a whiff of that with some of the advertisers pulling themselves, and every morning we get one or two of them trickling in. And as we all know, the wallet is the most important thing. And my guess is nothing changes from a regulatory standpoint with the Congress as it sits today, but maybe it changes as it relates to the advertisers who are advertising, and I'm using Facebook obviously as an example now. The European regulators have been much more active. They've been much more finding them for some of the things that they find in violation. But I don't think there's any wherewithal right now for Congress to get in front of these big tech companies and slow down the pace of their acquisitions. The pace of innovation in this country is not slowing down. We're seeing that in the IPO market. We're seeing in some of these companies roar past their IPO pricing and doubling in price in the few weeks that they're public. And I think that's telling you that the pace of innovation in this country is not slowing. In fact, it's accelerating. And I think that's always a problem.
Well, Mark, let's talk about the strength of that IPO pipeline, because that's absolutely critical at this point. Are these companies that aren't really viable, that are taking advantage of loose financial conditions, or are these really strong companies looking to come to market because they should?
I think it's both. I mean, I think, first of all, we've seen an amazing few companies, and we talked about it, Jonathan, less than a month ago when we saw this Zoom Info and Vroom price their IPOs, two offerings we at JMP were a part of. Vroom is definitely changing the landscape of how one purchases and sells a used car, and I think that is something that needed innovation. I think you poll most consumers, and one of the most uncomfortable experiences they have during any given year is buying or selling a car. And they are definitely on the front end of that innovation. You look at what Hertz is doing in terms of their bankruptcy, they're going to start to unload many of their cars, and these companies like Vroom and Carvana are great repositories for some of these cars. You look at Zoom Info, it's growing and vastly outpacing some of the already public companies in terms of some of their metrics, the Rule of 40, which we classically talk about growth and margins for them. But you're going to start to see some that will go public. And I think the question I would have about some of those companies is, are there a lot of really small IPOs that are focused on more of a consumer audience as opposed to the institutional audience in terms of buyers? That's what I would look for if you wanted to see some whiff of froth in the market. But we're a part of probably a half a dozen companies that should go public between now and Labor Day. And I look at the balance sheets, and I look at some of the investors, and I look at some of their prospects and marketplaces. I don't see that right now, Jonathan. I don't see that in some of the companies that we're starting to underwrite. If you see a lot of small companies that take advantage of that, I get worried. I'm just not there right now.
I don't imagine if you were underwriting or helping to underwrite bad companies, you'd tell us they were anyway, Mark, but I appreciate your insight nevertheless. Mark Lehman there of JMP Securities on Big Tech in Silicon Valley. Tom Keene, is there arrogance in Silicon Valley? I think for many people, if you looked at Apple, you might conclude no. For many people, if you look at Facebook, you might have a different conclusion.
It is remarkable, company to company and person to person, John, what that's like. I had the great privilege for years of being out at Stanford for their annual tech soiree with economists, and I can tell you, table to table, each industrial leader out there is different. To make generalizations about it is just flat out wrong.
Equity futures this morning, Tom, we're down 21 on the S&P 500, negative 0.7%. Coming up next on this program, we'll catch up with Shahab Jalanous, Credit Suisse's global head of FX strategy. Alongside Tom Keene, together with Lisa Bravitz, I'm Jonathan Ferro. Heard on Bloomberg Radio, seen on Bloomberg TV. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Y'all, Jeff.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Wednesday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
And action.
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get in.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set, and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a machine or to someone called Mac or Derek or Sanjay or Sue or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hi, I'm Ali. How can I help?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
About the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
What we need to realize is that, we're going to be in a slow growth world for a very long period of time.
It's an urgently needed discussion now
to think about how do we think about getting back to central bank independence.
The markets don't seem to have noticed that the number of new COVID-19 cases in the U.S. has gone up by 55% in the past week.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz.
Good morning, everyone. Jonathan Farrell, Lisa Abramowitz, and Tom Keene. We are thrilled you're with us for our simulcast on Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television worldwide. Shahab Jalan is to come up in a moment. We'll talk the markets, the FX, the dollar. But overwhelming all today is the news on the virus. Julia Leche and our team in Brazil out with a terrific article on the pandemic in Brazil. And John, I know it's not equivalent, but it is the same energy about the Sun Belt in America. Not a pandemic, but John, it is a surprise, the worsening conditions of the virus in the Sun Belt.
You're right to say it's not equivalent because it's not, Tom, but certainly it's concerning regardless. And I think for many market participants at the moment, they've had some confidence that there is a higher bar to shutting down these economies once again. That tolerance of policymakers is beginning to be tested over the last several days. Will it constrain the reopening process? Will it hit consumer and business confidence? Those two issues right now, top and front of mind for many investors at the moment.
And you see, Lisa, within the data today, the market pulls back, and I know we're within the range. But, Lisa, I'm sorry. I observed gold. Good morning, Dennis Gartman. What a great call. Really outright buttressed up against an 1800 print. Lisa, what do you suggest gold is saying?
I cannot speak for gold. I will say a lot of people are looking at the potential for some sort of debasement of the dollar or a sense of what all of the money printing will do. And they're also seeking a haven. I will just say, taking a step back to John's point about the resurgence of viruses, Jonathan Golub yesterday of Credit Suisse saying he had conviction in equities because the increase in virus counts were not coinciding with an increase in deaths. And this is the question mark. Is the spread of the virus a natural process of normal younger people cutting out and just getting the virus and then getting better? Or is this a precursor for a rise in hospitalizations and deaths to come?
I've asked that of a lot of guests, and particularly those folks from Johns Hopkins University, and I can assure you, even though it is a different disease for the aged from those middle-aged and certainly those younger, there's still a great concern about the case buildup. John, I want to frame out to Shahab Jalous now, and I want to go to you, John Farrell, on the foreign exchange market. And John, the absolute foundational thing we've got is dollar resiliency for 5 years. No one, John, really saw that coming, did they?
They didn't, but there's a big headwind to dollar strength, and I think we should recognize that, and that's negative real yields in the United States. And inflation expectations starting to creep higher a little bit as well, Tom. Keep an eye on that, and I think that's what's behind what we're seeing with the gold price. Negative real yields in America, I think that's got to be at the epicenter of thinking in foreign exchange, together with the risk appetite that people thought was improving coming into June.
Well, the yield differentials and, of course, the flow differentials, and that's something Shahab Jalanous knows well at Credit Suisse, originally off their Singapore desk and out of the London School of Economics grind. Shahab, good morning to you. What is the Credit Suisse call on the U.S. dollar?
Morning. We are looking for a weaker dollar linked to some of the points you've already made. Firstly, we do have a situation where the Fed is still buying, in effect, around $80 billion a month of treasuries, and the balance sheet expansion is continuing with maybe slightly slower than the peak levels that we saw, but still by any historical standard at a fast pace. You also have still talk of yield curve control. Our rate strategist, for example, thinks the market is still pricing around a 40% chance of yield curve control being introduced in the U.S. within the next 3 months. Some feel that the Fed has already decided to do that, and it's just a question of working out implementation. So these factors, together with very low nominal rates, we talked about real rates, but nominal rates are also very low, obviously, and so yield differentials, even in nominal terms, do not preclude being short dollars these days, unlike the last few years.
And folks, for those of you on our simulcast, this is really important how we fold in our conversation of yesterday with James Bullard over to the foreign exchange realities of Shahab Jalanous. On yield curve control, Shahab, do you just assume that means lower and longer at the zero bound? And as John Farrell mentions, the interest rate market must adapt to that, and that's expressed in your world of foreign exchange.
I think that's right. I think in our world of foreign exchange, clearly real yields do matter in the long run, but in the very short term, nominal rates matter too. That's basically the real cost, the cost of carry that you pay for being long or short a currency. And at this point in time, unlike recent years, the dollar in nominal terms does not offer any significant yield pickup, and yield curve control would ensure that would be the case going forward for a long time as well. So all of a sudden, currencies like the euro or the yen or the Swiss franc that have some positive characteristics, let's say from a fiscal perspective relative to the US or from a current account perspective, they don't look so bad all of a sudden because now they don't have a negative yield differential relative to the US dollar. So owning them becomes much more attractive, and I think that's the state of play that we're in right now.
Shahab, what does yield curve control mean to you? When you say you expect to see it, what are you expecting to see?
Well, we believe if it's going to be introduced, it's more likely to be a bit like the Australian case, for example, in the 3-year tenor, or maybe up to the 5-year tenor, where the Fed would effectively signal to the market that it's not going to let yields move above a certain level, a certain very low level, up to that point in time. Now, in other countries, for example, in Japan, you have yield curve control all the way out to 10 years. Now, you probably don't need to move into that space quite yet. We'll see what happens with inflation expectations. But given that inflation expectations are going up already in the US, presumably you don't need to go that far up the curve. But even in the 3-year tenor, for example, it's still a major innovation for the US to move to yield curve control, and it's a new challenge for the dollar. And the problem here, of course, for the dollar as well is nobody really considers it to be a cheap currency. If anything, most valuation models would probably have it at the expensive end of any long-term valuation level, particularly against the likes of the yen and the euro. So it makes the trade easier to be short dollars when you know that it's not even seen as cheap by anybody.
Well, Sharp, looking at where the treasuries are right now, out to the belly of the curve, we're already there for the Fed, aren't we? We're at 33 basis points on a 5-year, just outside of the range on the Fed funds rate. And I'm just trying to work out what difference yield curve control is actually going to make. 2's at 20 basis points. How much lower can they go?
Well, that's true. And as I said, I think the market is already a long way towards pricing in yield curve control being introduced just as soon as the next 3 months. So it's definitely something that's in the consciousness of the market already. But the fact is, when you look at the dollar from a longer term perspective, it's not simply the surprise element of more yield curve control and more aggressive yield curve control that could take it lower. It's basically adding this to an already difficult picture for the dollar. For example, when you look at it from the perspective of valuation, as I mentioned, it wasn't cheap. When you look at it in terms of things like the US's likely fiscal trajectory or current account trajectory, those aren't looking good. Then you look at political risk, for example, the possibility of unrest around the election in November, the presidential election, but also congressional elections. All of these, it's the whole picture put together that makes the dollar look difficult right now. And the other thing, of course, to note is that in the rest of the world, you actually have some positive developments going on, particularly in the case of the euro, where finally you have a move being made that seems tangible towards a form of fiscal risk mutualization, and that's in the shape of the European Recovery Fund. We'll find out more about this next month when EU leaders meet to discuss it properly. But if that comes through, then you do have a major, maybe a multi-year innovation that's going to be euro positive, exactly at the time as the dollar is facing these problems. And it's these kinds of divergences that tend to lead to FX trends. And if these come through together, that's the kind of thing that would make, for example, euro dollar look a likely candidate to go back up above 120 within this year.
Wow, that's a big call. I'm wondering, that's your highest conviction call, is that the euro will strengthen versus the dollar this year. What about emerging market currencies? Is this just a broad risk-on trend for the rest of the world versus the U.S.?
So I think, generally speaking, when the euro is going up, it tends to act as a tailwind for emerging markets as well relative to the US dollar. Of course, one issue now with emerging markets is that interest rates have come down a lot in those countries as well. So the risk premium, what you get paid for that is much less than it used to be. So that's something to consider. But secondly, there are regional differences to consider. So, for example, in Latin America right now, there are countries like Chile and Brazil that have been heavily affected by the pandemic and continue to be so. We probably would shy away of buying those currencies at this point in time. In fact, we like being short the Chilean peso and the Brazilian real for choice. But there's other currencies in the emerging market space where some of these risks are slightly less immediate, and maybe the fiscal positions coming into the crisis were more robust. I'm thinking of things like the Korean won, the Indonesian rupiah, or the Russian ruble. So those types of currencies do still look to us like they could be winners in a world where the dollar is falling against the euro.
Shahab, always great to get your thoughts. Send our best to the team at Credit Suisse. Shahab Jalanous there on this FX market, looking for euro dollar to get out to 120 before year end. Right now, euro dollar just south of 113. And your equity market, the shape of things shaping up as follows. We're down by 0.7% on the S&P 500, just off by around about 22 points. You can call it 23. Outside of that, in the bond market, I can hear some crowd noise creeping into this market check. Yields up by a basis point to 0.7%. 2%. I feel like I have to confirm, Lisa, that it is actually Tom doing an impression of crowd noises. Euro dollar coming down 1/3%. Just a little bit of dollar strength creeping in as this session grows older. From New York this morning, good morning to you all. This is Bloomberg.
Now let's see what else is going on around the world. Here with the latest headlines is Amy Morris. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Tom. The U.S. still seeing that surge in coronavirus infections in some states. Cases on the rise in Florida. That's where Governor Ron DeSantis says the infection rate has climbed above 10%.
What we've seen, particularly over the last week, is a real explosion in new cases amongst our younger demographics.
DeSantis is asking local officials now to crack down on establishments that violate the state's 50% capacity rule. Now in Texas, daily infections hit a record. That state reporting more than 5,000 new cases. California reporting its biggest jump in cases, the fourth record day in the past week. New Jersey also showing warning signs.
The number of patients in either critical or intensive care was 307. Number of ventilators in use was 216. Each of these metrics is a slight increase from the day before.
Governor Phil Murphy says the rate of transmission in New Jersey is starting to creep up and warns residents not to let a single-day increase turn into a trend. Axios, meanwhile, reporting a new survey from data firm Civic Science finds 65% of adults would rather return to lockdown if cases of COVID-19 rise significantly. Former President Barack Obama appeared with his former Vice President Joe Biden for a virtual campaign event yesterday. Biden thanked his donors for a lucrative fundraising event, and the latest New York Times Siena College poll shows the former Vice President, Joe Biden, leading President Trump nationally, now 50 to 36%. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. Much more still to come. On a Wednesday morning, this is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Influence.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
This is a message from the government. Some businesses are now able to welcome back their employees and customers. To keep everyone safe, it's important you follow government guidance and make your workplace COVID secure. Businesses should carry out COVID-19 risk assessments, put in place hygiene procedures, and help staff and customers keep a safe distance. Talk to your employees, listen to their concerns, and if possible, help them to work from home. Every workplace is different, but by following this guidance, you can get back to business safely and play your part in managing the risk of infection. Visit gov.uk/working-safely for more information. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
At Honda, we believe in our ears. Listening can help solve some of life's biggest conundrums. For example, if a car breaks down and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is yes. The new Jazz Hybrid will pinpoint your location automatically and send for help at the tap of a button. And with its personal assistant, you can find the answers to other conundrums like, where is a good vegan gluten-free pizza place with free parking? The new Honda Jazz. Hybrid and connected. Honda. The power of dreams. Connectivity subscription available in selected grades.
We expect real GDP to come back to the 2019 level by the end of 2021. And so there is going to be a lot of repair to be done in the system. There are sectors where the degree of predictability is very high in terms of what may happen. There are other sectors, retail, oil and gas, leisure, gaming, where there's a lot of things we don't know.
There's a lot of things we don't know. PIMCO CEO Manny Roman there speaking at Bloomberg Invest from New York City this morning. Good morning to you all. Alongside Tom Keene, together with Lisa Brammitz, I'm Jonathan Ferro. Your opening bell, 1 hour and 12 minutes away with equity futures around about 3,100 on the S&P 500. A bounce off the lows, down 18 on the day, off by 0.6%. Outside of that in foreign exchange, as the session grows older, the dollar comes in a little bit stronger. Euro dollar down by 1/3% now. The Aussie off by 0.4%. Even the yen and the Swissy a little bit weaker against the stronger dollar there. And in the bond market, Treasury yields as follows. Yields up 2 basis points on a 10-year. A lift, twos out to 30s by 1 or 2 basis points. On a 10-year, we're at 0.73%. Tom Keene, I've got one for you. Just to deploy a little bit of capital out of that cash fund you've got. 100-year Austria, just south of 1%. How'd you like that?
Yeah, I saw that. Too short a maturity.
We'll try and sort that out, Tom. I'll get them to issue something a little bit longer for you.
They're going to call it a Bonaparte, and it's not there yet. Anyways, the Austrian paper, folks, 100 years, and, the French with their 50-year paper. And to be clear, for those of you not up to speed on this, the United States is steadfast. We're not going to do this. Very quickly here, Lisa, how did the 20-year piece go? We did a 20-year a while ago, right?
Yeah, and it did well. There's a question, what is going to happen with the U.S.? Are they going to follow on with a 50-year bond? And certainly people are expecting over in Europe, others will follow Austria's second century bond, given the incredible demand, record demand, sub 1% yields. Why not, right? What's next, 150-year bonds?
Yeah, I'm looking for 150. I'll even take a 120 as well. Right now, Henrietta Trey's with us with Veda Partners as we look to Washington and policy. Just a magnificent career with actual legislative work on the Hill and, of course, with Marty Zweig years ago. Henrietta, wonderful to have you with us. I've got a dumb question, but an obvious question. How do the people you follow, how do they change in the summer before a big election? What's the behavior that adapts and changes when the heat is on?
Well, Tom, you never ask a dumb question. Thank you so much. I feel like our clients have been with us for so long that they start to ask the really good questions early. So they're already skipping ahead past the election onto, what does tax policy look like under a Biden administration? What can we expect from further U.S.-EU tensions? Where are we on China? They are already into, November 4th and beyond.
Wait, whoa. Wait a minute. Are they assuming the election of the vice president?
I think that's the base case for a lot of folks. I think that's what the math tells you. That's certainly what we see from everything since the 2016 elections, the various midterms, specifically proven by Super Tuesday. We look a lot at the generic polling data, which suggests that Democrats have a lead just in sheer voter turnout of plus 10. That suggests a wave that is on par with 2008, and that's literally just the math. So I think that for investors and our clients who've been through so many elections now and follow the midterms very closely, understand that the House and Senate are sometimes more important than who gets elected to the White House. That's where they're prioritizing. So we do a lot of conversations around what does reconciliation instructions look like? Where can the corporate tax rate go? What are we looking at on infrastructure? What are the priorities with deficit and spending? So they are very much preparing for that, which I think is very appropriate.
Henrietta, 6 months ago, when President Trump looked like he might be losing a little bit of ground to the Democratic candidate, stocks sold off. Now there is little move. Why?
That is interesting. I think there is some confusion around, obviously, coronavirus that gets in the way of that development. I would say that 6 months ago, we were still dealing with the potential for Bernie Sanders versus Biden. So there was actually a huge relief when Biden won the Super Tuesday states and it became clear that he was going to be the Democratic nominee, because a lot of investors had been very fearful of just the outside chance that Bernie Sanders could have been the nominee. So I think there's been a lot of flip-flopping back and forth there, but a really nuanced view of what could happen under a Biden administration is frankly not all that much to the downside and a lot to the upside if you're looking for economic stimulus in the market. The question is really, what's the scale and scope of any stimulus going to be? Is it going to be a $2 trillion infrastructure package, or is it going to be, a de minimis $500 billion bill? We err on the side of $2 trillion. We use the 2009 Biden as a pretty fantastic example. He was literally in the White House during a very similar economic environment, and he deficit spent and passed the ARRA at the time, which was a huge bill for 2009 numbers, pales in comparison to what we're seeing this year. And that's really our rubric for what we'd expect from Biden in 2021.
Henrietta, it also speaks to the potential stimulus that we may get ahead of the election. You wrote in a recent note that if it takes longer to get a stimulus package passed, it will likely be bigger. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, I actually was having a great conversation with a super smart guy focused on the auto industry. And we've been working with them just to understand, hey, where are the stimulus bailouts going to come? We saw the airlines bailouts and the CARES Act are there going to be others? There's been rumors of an oil bailout or questions about cruise lines and hotels, et cetera. The reality is that it's unlikely that we're going to see bailouts for any specific sectors. Congress still gets gun shy around that after the bailouts of the financial services space, essentially in the Great Recession. So there's aversion to sector-specific bailouts, but right now, if you were looking at Republican Senate staff and Senate members, there are, I would say, at least 13 members who are very opposed to meaningful deficit spending in July. They are expecting robust June employment numbers. We're going to get a roll-off of the PPP and the 8 weeks of employment requirement there, which will make July employment numbers shrink meaningfully, is the expectation. So right now, the economic figures don't look so bad. And when we get June numbers, people are expecting them on Capitol Hill to be pretty robust. Once we get July numbers in August, that sets us up for the legislative debate period in September, things are going to look much worse. If things look much worse, then you can get more money doled out. It's obviously just 2 months before the election. You could get some concerted efforts from President Trump to say, hey, we really need more stimulus, and then they could loosen the purse strings a little bit. But for right now, they just want to hold on to all their cash with sort of a tight fist.
Henrietta, fantastic to catch up with you. As always, a really important discussion, one we'll continue through the next few weeks and months as we count you down to November. In a world where we do a business cycle in a single quarter, November feels like an absolute lifetime away. I'm not sure we're close enough to get the predictions and start talking about them with any real conviction anytime soon. From New York City this morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
For the Jewish Communal Fund, Noel Spiegel, former senior partner with Deloitte & Touche and past JCF president, discusses the advantages of a donor-advised fund over a private foundation.
There's a lot involved in having a private foundation. You need to engage attorneys, you need to engage accountants, file tax returns. At JCF, all of that is done for you. You don't have to get involved in anything other than making your contribution to your fund and then determining which grants that you want to make.
A JCF fund may be opened with a minimum $5,000 contribution of cash or appreciated securities and can be used as an alternative to or together with a private foundation.
If you have a foundation, you have to list all of the contributions that you made. Potentially anybody, because the information is public, can find out exactly which organizations a foundation has made charitable contributions to.
Let JCF simplify your philanthropy and protect your privacy. Learn more about JCF's private client group at jcfny.org.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
Different adapts, different overcomes, different keeps moving, different keeps thinking, different stays connected, different never stops dreaming. The University of Northampton invites you to a virtual open day for a taste of all the benefits of studying with us from this September. Search University of Northampton Virtual Open Days. It's the future, but different.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
And action!
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was
was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
Equities a little bit lighter this Wednesday morning from New York City this morning. Good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg TV and radio alongside Tom Keane together with Lisa Bravitz. I'm Jonathan Ferro. 1 hour away from the opening bell. Equity futures down 18. The tape improving just a little bit from where it was a couple of hours ago. Still down 0.6% on the S&P 500. Just about north of 3,100 on the S&P 500. In the bond market, Treasury yields just a little bit higher on a 10-year, call it 2 basis points. We travel north to 0.73%. And in foreign exchange, dollar strength, the story here against all of G10, including the yen and the Swissy. Euro dollar coming back around about 0.25%. Tom bringing up the Aussie a little bit earlier. That's down 1/3 of 1%. Yeah. That's the price action. Tom, allow me to do a quick promo for the Bloomberg Investment Conference. The Bloomberg Invest Conference taking place today. John Micklethwaite will be catching up with Mr. Solomon at Goldman Sachs. Looking forward to a conversation with Citi's Jane Fraser and Bloomberg's Shonali Basak. And I'll be catching up with the co-CIO over at Bridgewater, Bob Prince. That'll coming up a little bit later, starting at around about 1 p.m. Eastern Time, Tom.
I would suggest your interview will be really, really interesting to Global Wall Street, John. The idea here of what we heard at Davos of a dampening, a slowdown, a lassitude to the global economy, and what that will mean for the markets. It's good to get prepared for the Bob Prince interview by speaking with Peter Hooper. He's at Deutsche Bank, and he leads a terrifically acute and interesting set of economists. It's amazing each week, folks, how Deutsche Bank delivers something different, a different thought on the zombie nature of this slowdown, or maybe interesting ratios from Matthew Lazzetti as well. Peter Hooper, wonderful to have you with us. Bob Prince is in the investment world of Bridgewater, and he would talk about the effect of the zero bound on the markets. From where you sit as an economist, what is the effect of the permanence of the zero bound on our financial system and our markets?
Well, Tom, I think the good news in the U.S. is that the Fed is taking the zero bound fairly seriously. Unlike a number of other countries, the Fed is not going to be going negative with rates. Certainly no time soon, judging from everything we've heard. Doing so would be painful for the financial system, would be painful especially for banks and for households. The households are net savers. The rate of return we're getting on assets now is all-time low. So I think the zero bound is effective in the U.S., and that's good news.
I look, Peter Hooper, at all that the good news is and all that's going on right now, and that's fine, but there's a point where the ammunition runs out. Does your team have a worry that the fiscal impulse at some point ends?
Well, so ammunition running out here. Yes, we are concerned that the good news on the economy right now, which is on a little bit of a sugar high, given all the fiscal, the incredible speed and magnitude of fiscal stimulus that we've support that we've gotten so far, is giving us numbers that are better than expected in the labor market, in consumer spending on goods, at least so far, and that is taking some of the pressure off. If we delay in continuing with this support, we are facing some cliffs ahead. The extra unemployment comp is going to come to an end at the end of July, and unemployment compensation overall will be dropping off substantially at the end of the year. We see unemployment still near 10% by the end of the year. The Fed itself has it forecasted at close to 9%. So if we don't see a continuation, there is going to be the potential of a substantial drop-off in spending and a good deal of pain down the road here. So Yes, that is important.
Peter, just to jump in, one thing Bridgewater has discussed is the duration mismatch between what has happened with this pandemic, an 18-month episode, maybe longer as you describe, a long time to recover, and the 3-month policy band-aid that's been applied to this economy that, as you point out, is set to expire in the next 30 days, for some measures at least. And I just wonder what should be the optimal guide for policymakers right now so that they fully understand how much stimulus we need, where we need it, and for how long we need it for.
Well, I think, take your guide from what's happening in the pandemic. I mean, the numbers we're getting in the southern states right now, the virus has been thriving indoors all along, and as activity moves increasingly indoors with the hot weather, the numbers are getting a lot worse. The baby boomers account for something like 35% of consumer spending in this country, and if this virus continues to get worse, this consumer spending is not going anywhere down the road. So take the economic forecasts seriously and be prepared to fill some mighty big gaps as it comes along here. We've been talking about.
I'm always trying to understand where the consensus is at the moment and trying to gauge what market participants are expecting. Right now, in your conversations that you have with clients, what do they think comes out of Washington in 30 days' time?
I think the general. I think people are getting a little concerned about the seriousness with which Congress is taking this matter. Whether we get another $1 trillion package in July the odds are slipping there. People are thinking that could well move into later in the summer, which is beginning to cut things a little close. So,
Peter,
I think
there's also a question of they do cut things close, as you're saying, that the unemployment rate could end the year, as you said, above 10%. What's the composition of the next wave of layoffs that people are talking about, the layer of management and higher paid positions that some expect to be eliminated in the near future?
Lisa, you're right. So far it has been heavily in the food services industry and accommodation, et cetera, a lot of lower paying jobs. But as if consumer spending in various service sectors fails to come back, a lot of the support we're giving to firms is not going to allow activity continue. You are going to start to see bigger layoffs moving up the pay scale. The next wave of bankruptcies, of business failures as activity fail. We're seeing a rebound in activity from extremely low levels, but as it fails to get back to anything close to normal, there is going to be some real winnowing of firms across the spectrum. So I do anticipate more pain at higher income levels later this year, no question.
How long will it take for us to get back to levels of unemployment that we saw earlier this year?
Our expectation is we're not until 2020, late 2021, early 2022. Actually, in terms of levels of employment, which implies continued elevated unemployment. Given the trend. The trend growth that we will be missing. We don't see the level of activity back to pre-crisis trend projections for several years to come at least. It's going to take quite a while.
Peter, we've got to leave it there. Always enjoy getting your perspective on the show. So my best to you and yours. Peter Hooper, Deutsche Bank Global Head of Economics Research. Tom, that's the consensus, isn't it? We reopen, we get that mechanical bounce because you go from lockdown to reopen, and then the long slog starts. It's going to take a long time to fully recover.
Okay. That's a consensus, but to Lisa's question 5 minutes ago, the basic idea that the good news is we get back to 10% unemployment. John, that was the worst unemployment of 08 and 09, and we all knew how we felt then. So, I just don't buy the behavioral recovery in New York City with 18% unemployment right now until you really get well under 10% employment, and no one knows when that's going to be.
I couldn't agree with you more. 10% is absolutely terrible. I don't think anyone thinks that's a good number. I think what we all want to see is something much, much better than that. What I worry about really is that as we reopen in New York, Massachusetts, in the Northeast, you're going to see the aggregate numbers continue to push higher. What that could do is mask the fragility beneath, because there are other states further along in the reopening process. And to Michelle Meyer's point at Bank of America, what is critical at this point, Lisa, is to understand whether the increase of infections, as we start to breach hospital capacity, or at least the comforts of capacity where policymakers would be comfortable, I think that's the point where you start to wonder whether it constrains consumer confidence and business confidence as well. And you've got to look at the high-frequency data state by state, because this slowdown, if it appears in Texas and elsewhere, won't appear in the aggregate numbers as New York and elsewhere starts to reopen, because that will be such a powerful force for the sequential improvement. The slowdown that you're going to experience, I think the forward-looking indicator to keep an eye on is the high-frequency data in the states that are struggling with the pandemic again right now.
John, that's certainly where a lot of people are focusing. And if you just look anecdotally, you already are hearing about a fallback in demand in places that are getting harder hit. John, it feels like such a muddle. It's so hard to get sort of a cohesive arm around what's going on economically or markets-wise, given all of these uncertainties and the psychology of it all. The idea that studies show that the consumer sentiment, their willingness to go out and their fear is really what's driving economic activity way more than any official policies at this point, John.
I couldn't agree more. Additional layer on top of all of this risk, Tom, is just the policymakers' tolerance has been tested. In the last couple of days, Harris County, home of Houston, across Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, the tone of Governor Abbott, Tom, has really changed in the last couple of days.
Yes.
A week ago, he was just steadfast. Reopen, carry on reopening. There's some real concern in his voice in a way that it was not there a week ago.
Well, he's got Peter Hotez and others at Baylor University that can advise him with a great medical system that Texas has. John, I'm watching Florida more than any. I think the demographics are, I've said this from the very, very beginning, just after Valentine's Day. This virus in Florida, they do not go together.
Equity futures right now, Tom, down 21. Just a little bit of concern starting to creep in, a defensive tilt to the price action over the last week. We're down 0.7% on the S&P 500 this morning. Over the last 24 hours, big tech outperforming in a significant way. From New York City this morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg.
Now let's see what else is going on around the world. Here with the latest headlines is Amy Morris. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Tom. U.S. Infectious Diseases Chief Anthony Fauci and other health officials haven't spoken with President Trump in more than 2 weeks, but they have talked to lawmakers. Fauci was on Capitol Hill warning Congress that the pandemic is not over.
We're now seeing a disturbing surge of infections.
We are seeing surges in Texas, California, and Florida. Another state seeing numbers on the rise, Arizona, where President Trump held a rally yesterday. And despite the numbers, hundreds lined up to see the president during the campaign event in Phoenix, where the president blamed Democrats for the economic slowdown because of the virus.
They are trying to do their best to keep the country shut down and closed because they'd love those numbers not to be good, but there's not a lot they're going to be able to do about it. Not a lot.
Former President Barack Obama helped raise a record-breaking $7.6 million from more than 175,000 individual donors in a grassroots fundraiser for Joe Biden. Biden, meanwhile, is backed by 50% of registered voters, while 36% support Donald Trump, according to the latest national New York Times Siena College poll. The Senate, meanwhile, is headed toward a standoff on an attempt to legislate an overhaul of U.S. policing practices. Democrats are ready to block debate on a Republican plan that they say is too narrow. They want a stronger bipartisan bill. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has locked in a vote for today to begin debate on the GOP drafted measure with promises it could be amended. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, this is Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on quick tape by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. A growing number of people are snapping up second homes, moving from cities to the suburbs or moving from rentals and becoming first-time buyers.
It really is all about supply and demand, and there's such a demand now and the supply is down.
Bill Dermody is chairman of the Greater Boston Real Estate Board, and he says watch for a flood of sales to close on Cape Cod and in other summer home locales in the coming months.
You see it with the pendings. The pendings are way up on the Cape, and you will see it eventually with the closed. But the pendings way up on the Cape.
And Dermody says real estate and mortgage brokers are getting ready for a red-hot summer.
The summer is going to become the spring market, and we're really feeling that.
Single-family home prices are going up in some places as a result, and new single-family home sales jumped 12% in May from a year ago, with even bigger increases in the Northeast and in the West. And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Connecting decision.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We fit car tyres for over 500,000 customers every year. We could fit yours at one of over 350 garages, or even on your driveway with our mobile experts, which means you can safely hit the road again and surprise that special someone.
Happy birthday!
From tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
We're now seeing a disturbing surge of infections that looks like it's a combination, but one of the things is an increase in community spread. And that's something that I'm really quite concerned about that. And you know that this has been something that's been in the press over the past couple of days.
Dr. Fauci there, weighing in on the situation as we start to see an increase in infections in places like Texas, Arizona, and Florida as well. From New York City this morning, good morning to you all. Alongside Tom Keene, together with Lisa Abramowitz, I'm Jonathan Ferro. Tom Keene getting ready to step away and count down to the opening bell over on Bloomberg TV. Doing that with Kate Moore of BlackRock as this cyclical rotation has really stalled in the last several weeks. We'll get to the more defensive bias that has really kicked in over the last couple of days.
That'll be really timely. Really looking forward to that. And John, we're really looking forward to your interview with Bob Prince of Bridgewater. Look for that with Mr. Farrow later this afternoon. Must watch, must listen for all of global Wall Street. Lisa Abramowitz and Tom Keene with you folks. And right now, without question, the most important interview we could do in this fair city of 5 boroughs, New York City, than trying to get our restaurants open for the society, the culture, and yes, the food that our restaurants bring. It's everything from McDonald's to a bistro to this and that. And Daniel Boulou is at the top of the heap. Not only the many different restaurants that he has, including Danielle, but also his management of the people, the management of the kitchens in the front of the house as well. Daniel Boulou joins us this morning here on Bloomberg Surveillance. Daniel, what do you need right now from Mayor de Blasio? What do you need from Governor Cuomo?
Of course, we got into phase 2, and I'm opening our West Side restaurant, Bar Boulou, and Épicerie Boulou with a big terrace. And of course, they have been flexible with giving the chance to restaurateurs to be able to put tables in the street and open their restaurants, but it's not the only solution. I think we need the citizens of New York to be very vigilant and very safe. We need to keep our staff very safe. Of course, we need to keep but we need to also continue to support the economy better by bringing back more customers. We have done takeout, and takeout has been good. With Daniel Boulou Kitchen, we started home delivery, and we have even delivered to the Hamptons and all that. But I think from the governor, of course, we are going to need a lot of support, and we are asking for the government to really be sensitive to our industry. Of course, we need to bring people back to work.
Is this once and for all, Danielle, that we do what Europe does effortlessly, which is, granted it's summer, that we need to move the restaurants outside, across the sidewalks, and indeed out into the streets? Do we have to change the rules of where the walls are of restaurants so you can break even?
And I think, but the summer in New York can be so hot, then it can be very, very uncomfortable as well to be outside. And we're looking also maybe at Danielle to be able to transform the restaurant in something more casual, more summery, more Mediterranean, and do a little pop-up for a couple of months and take people in a different sort of set of mind and set of place with a lot of safety measure. But we have to make sure first and foremost the city of New York is safe to be able to reopen inside as well. And we need serious guidance from the city and the state to do that.
Chef, casual dining definitely has a place. Fine dining is dead. That, according to Danny Meyer of Union Square Hospitality, who said he's not going to open his finer dining restaurants until there is a vaccine. What's your view on that?
I don't think fine dining will be dead, but I think fine dining will be suffering. And the one who can survive is the one who maybe has to do a good negotiation with their landlord. The landlord has to be very supportive to that. But I believe that every fine craft will still exist and continue to exist. We have the ability to scale down. We have the ability to be able to approach customer with something more simpler, more soulful, more cheaper. And I think we're going to try to work on all directions with that. I think it's not because we're fine dining and we don't know how to cook anything else. And I have proven that with also my all the different restaurants I have. And fine dining around the world is not going away. I mean, London, Singapore, and Paris, and everywhere. So I don't think we want America to lose this fine dining for sure.
Right. Danielle, one final question. I want you to speak to all of our listeners and viewers right now wondering what's going on in the kitchen. How do you maintain a new level of cleanliness in the kitchen?
Well, we have very strict guidelines. Just with the little crew we have right now for doing our takeout, we take everybody go to an exam on a regular basis to be checked. Everyone, when they arrive, we have tables with, of course, gloves and masks, and we want them to change everything from where they come from outside We make sure that they have spray also to spray themselves. They go to change, and then we respect the fact that we have to wear masks and be protected and be safe.
Right.
We try the social distancing, of course, in the kitchen is very important. Right now, we are producing about 6,000 meals every day, every week to City Meal on Wheel downtown, and you know, it's a lot of work, and we try to be very careful with that. We really. So besides the charitable work, the home, the takeout cooking with Daniel Boulou Kitchen is important, but we also are gearing up next week to open, even at the end of this weekend, we're opening on the west side. So we hope, and we're going to learn, but we're going to make our staff feel, of course, hospitable to its best.
Right. And Danielle, as I always say, if I own, say, BNP Paribas, I have to say that I own shares in it. I have to say, folks, at times in the recent years, I've had the Oysters Rockefeller at one of Daniel Boulou's wonderful establishments one too many times. Daniel Boulou, thank you so much for joining us today. This will be fascinating to see the restaurants open across this nation. Lisa, you know, a lot going on here in the markets, and I think I'm going to go back to it, Lisa. Gold testing $1,800 an ounce is a clarion call. I'm not sure what it means, but there it is.
Well, the inflationista is starting to pick up a little bit. And then there's also a question of a safe haven. It's kind of a conflation of both in a world of monetary stimulus and endless money printing.
Incredibly important interviews today. I really want to draw your attention to Bloomberg Invest Global. Mr. Solomon at Goldman Sachs will make an appearance as well. And don't forget Jonathan Farrow in conversation with Bob Prince. That'll be must watch, must listen for Global Wall Street early this afternoon. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Have you wanted to speak a new language?
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on,
boxing up goods and rolling them out,
shipping cattle,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
My name is Donya. I moved to Manchester in 2010. I came from Afghanistan. The first school day was a bit tough. I had no friends, couldn't speak English, and felt a bit left out. My high school teacher was very supportive. She matched me up with friends that spoke the same language as me. Having friends gave me a lot of confidence. I felt like I'm not being left out.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Get free one-to-one support with our teacher training advisors to get one step closer to the classroom. Subject to eligibility. Search Get Into Teaching.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
First, we're told that masks don't work. Then, we're told to wear them all the time. One week, we hear that the mortality rate is 2%. The next, well, who knows? In the time of COVID-19, there is so much uncertainty, and so much scientists are learning in real time, along with the rest of the world. So it's hard to know what you can be sure of and what's still a big question mark. Enter Podcast 19 from 538, where we'll explore the evidence behind the science in our fight against coronavirus. I'm science journalist Anna Rothschild. Each week, I'll investigate coronavirus mysteries, keep track of the latest developments on vaccines and treatments. Oh, and I'll try to edit out all the times I shush my family, since I'm recording this thing from the chaos of my home.
Search Podcast 19 to listen today.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
Certainly we've got to put a floor under the economic carnage.
Markets didn't believe the coronavirus would take down the world economy.
Finance.
The sellers are not necessarily finished, but quite exhausted.
Investment.
That's the reality that we have to settle ourselves to. This is the start of a depression.
We're going to have a bounce back when everything is open. The question is, what is the shape of the economy from there?
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. Thrilled you're with us today, this 9 o'clock hour on Bloomberg Radio. It is a changed America. There's no question about it. I'm not going to mince any words about it. The markets are what they are. Range-bound gold out near 1,800 this morning. And yeah, futures a little bit soft. They've recovered in the last hour. All of that is separate from the new awareness of a pandemic that will not go away. I did some fancy math earlier this morning. Thank you to the Financial Times and John Byrne Murdoch's great work there on putting out charts. Everybody's got great charts on what's going on in the pandemic, but the FT's been very clear on that. And what you need to know is the growth of cases in some of these Sunbelt states. I looked at Florida, Texas, and Arizona equate to the growth rate that we saw in New Jersey and New York about 85 days ago. You can figure out where that is from Valentine's Day. But the answer is the rate of change that we have in this pandemic is a new story this morning, and that's something everyone's adapting to. The mayors, the governors of those states, of course, and we'll see how Washington adapts off Dr. Fauci's comments yesterday. We always adapt by keeping up where the markets are, and we do that with David Wilson. David, what do you have this morning?
Well, we've got some deals to talk about, or potential deals at least. Dell Technologies really front and center. The shares are up more than 12.5% in early trading. The computer maker is considering a spinoff and other options for its 81% stake in software company VMware. That's according to the Wall Street Journal, citing unnamed people familiar with the discussions. Now, VMware also publicly traded those shares up about 7%. T-Mobile US is down 2.5%. The carrier is selling the equivalent of a 10% stake for $103 a share. That's about 4% less than yesterday's close. T-Mobile is going to use the money to buy back shares from Japan's SoftBank, its second largest stockholder. And then you have Waste Management higher by 0.5%. The trash hauler is cutting the price it will pay to buy advanced disposal services by about 8.5% to $2.7 billion. And the company's agreed to sell assets to GFL Environmental for $835 million in an effort to get U.S. approval for the deal. Now, advanced disposal is down 3.5%. GFL is higher by 4%. Airline stocks lower. United down 4%. The carrier began a $5 billion sale of debt backed by its frequent flyer program, Mileage Plus. United is selling $3 billion of bonds and seeking to borrow $2 billion from lenders.
David,
you've got American down 2%, Delta down 2.5%, and Southwest down 2% in early trading. Carnival.
Excuse me. David, we got to do the frequent flyer mile thing. I mean, I had no idea they were worth that much money.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what United will tell you anyway. And carriers are trying to borrow against whatever assets they have. You know, American did that deal. It was backed by some of its gates and routes and, airport slots. I mean, it's all a matter of being able to raise the cash. They need to stay in business because they're losing money day in and day out at this point.
Continue.
Carnival's down 5.5%. The cruise line owner lost an investment-grade credit rating at S&P, which cut its long-term rating by 3 notches to BB-. S&P's move followed a similar reduction in May by Moody's, which reduced its rating again yesterday. So you look across the industry, you see Royal Caribbean down 3.5%, and Norwegian down 4%. Patterson, though, higher by 4.5%. The dental product distributor's earnings for the fiscal fourth quarter were more than twice the average analyst estimate in Bloomberg survey, and sales fell less than analysts projected. Some weakness in restaurant stocks in early trading. Cheesecake Factory lower by 3.5%. The company was cut to the equivalent of sell from neutral at J.P. Morgan. The firm said Cheesecake Factory may recover more slowly than its peers because many of its locations are in urban areas and in shopping malls. But you look at those peers, at the moment you see Dave & Buster's down 3.5%, Red Robin Gourmet Burgers down 3.5%, and Roots Hospitality, that's the Roots Chris Steakhouse chain, down 4%.
David Wilson, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate that. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning brought to you by Cohn Resnick Advisory Assurance Tax. Are you applying for PPP loan forgiveness? Don't leave money on the table or fail an SBA review. Visit CohnResnick.com/loan forgiveness. And we all thank Cohn Resnick for their support of Bloomberg Surveillance. Lots going on this morning, of course, and we're looking at the markets, and the answer is the markets churning and south. They'll mention gold. We'll talk a lot on gold here in a moment. Right now, it is important that we look at how this stuff gets made. And this is not a small issue. It's like the sports stuff. How does all that sports stuff happen? And the answer is the tax law has been set up so very, very rich people can do things with sports and use their tax shield, if you will. They can do the same thing in Hollywood. Sam McQuillan joins us right now on a mouthful, transferable film tax credits. But Sam, this is basically how all this art stuff gets made. Is it's rich people looking for a tax shelter. Is that true?
Not all the time, but in about 12 states, rich people will be subsidizing and paying production companies for the tax credits they get. They can use the money up front, which goes to the productions, obviously.
Well, you explain how that works. So if there's somebody with a budget of $20 million, they go out to a bunch of rich people and they say, help us finance the film. And then how does it work from there?
So basically, pretty much every state has some sort of incentive, tax break incentive, a grant for a production company coming in, filming a TV show, a movie, commercial, whatever. And then they'll say, hey, at the end of the year, we'll give you about, a tax break for about 20% of what you spend it or something like that. But oftentimes these production companies can't use that tax break because, they're just coming into the state to film. They're not based there. They don't have many income taxes to pay. So in order to finance the film, they'll go out to a market, look for the highest bidder. And it's a lot of companies. It's like Verizon, Apple, Walmart, even Oprah Winfrey, who will, buy these credits that they can use on their own income taxes because they have a lot of taxes in those states. And they'll just give cash to a production company up front.
Is there a scandal to this, or is it just a surprise that this is the way we're financing the huge amount of product, what Paul Sweeney would say is all the content that's out there? Is there an uproar about this?
I wouldn't call it a scandal, but no state really makes it public who is buying the credits and who pays for the credits. It's oftentimes these third parties that will say the production companies are buying credits for a discount because there's so many out there.
Yeah.
I talked to about 12 states where this practice goes on, and only one, Illinois, gave me a list of credits sold and who's buying, which was just, full of Macy's, Kohl's, all these companies.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's not the movie business, but the Chicago Blackhawks probably tried to sell their credits. But frankly, Sam, they're so lousy, they probably couldn't move the credits right now. Tell me about what you learned about New York State. I mean, we say good morning to all of you across this nation, but certainly looking at, I could talk about L.A. in L.A. and in New York, is this a dominant theme about how all the product gets made?
No, actually, in LA and New York, this doesn't go on because their programs are set up.
Interesting.
At least where in New York, if a production company, doesn't have the tax liability to actually use the credit, they can simply give it back to the state and get a rebate for it. And in California, they don't allow transfers. They only allow that for independent films because they're shorter financed. But yeah, in those states, there's no third party market deals going on with rich taxpayers giving production companies money.
Sam, thank you so much. Sam McQuillan with us, of course, with Bloomberg News, and this on the with Bloomberg Tax, I should say, and this on the interesting tax ramifications of what we see in the movie business. Geeta Gopinath is out with her important report, the International Monetary Fund. It's not news that they downgraded their outlook, and they've been way out front of that. I give her high marks for right up front in January, and then, of course, this was broke in February of beginning to mark down what they see. But here are the new statistics. The fund makes very clear that GDP will shrink 4.9%, more than the 3% predicted in April. For 2021, the forecast of 5.4 down from 5.8. I think that's the important one really for all that we talk about every day, where IMF is moving from a 5.8 statistic on global GDP down to 5.4. Not a modest amount. I really would frame out in this course, coming off of our discussion with Peter Hooper earlier this morning with Deutsche Bank, the shock here and the mystery that's out there into September and into the end of the year. David Rosenberg was just adamant. He has no clue how this is going to shape out because of these dynamics of the pandemic. We need a news update in Washington with our news. Here's Amy Morris.
Thank you, Tom. The U.S. seeing a surge in coronavirus infections in several states. Cases on the rise in Florida. The infection rate there has now climbed above 10%. In Texas, daily infections hit a record, with that state reporting more than 5,000 new cases. Dr. Mark Boom is CEO of Houston Methodist Hospitals. He says he noticed a shift in attitude in May.
It's really frustrating because we've all been saying, and for a long time, we know how to conquer this virus. It is through all of those best practices of social distancing and all of the other things we talk about, wearing a mask, etc. And somewhere around Memorial Day, people just sort of sighed a breath of relief and said, hey, it's summer. I'm going to act like it's summer, and I'm going to act like this thing never was here. And I think we're really paying the price for that now.
California also reported its biggest jump in cases. That's the fourth record day in the past week, and New Jersey is showing warning signs.
The number of patients in either critical or intensive care was 307. Number of ventilators in use was 216. Each of these metrics is a slight increase from the day before.
Governor Phil Murphy warning residents not to let a single day increase turn into a trend. Former President Barack Obama appeared with his former Vice President Joe Biden for a virtual campaign event yesterday, calling him the best choice to heal the nation. Biden thanked donors for what was the most lucrative fundraising event so far in the 2020 race.
We've raised a remarkable $7.6 million. This campaign is powered by grassroots donors like you, and is especially in these tough times. Your support means everything.
Biden leads President Donald Trump 50% to 36% in a New York Times Siena College poll, staking out a wide advantage among a broad cross-section of demographic groups. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Tom and Paul.
Amy, thank you so much. Of course, the tape here, not good, but better than it was 3 hours ago. The VIX was up 2 points, now up only 1 point exactly, 32.36. That really shows the range-bound nature. We go up, we go down, and of course the VIX, a little bit of fear in the market today, 32.36. Futures negative 17, much better than 2 hours ago. The level 3101. Excuse me, Dow Futures 25,837. That's Dow Futures negative 182. In the yield space, no question about it, a little bit higher yields, but yields just shockingly stable over the last number of days. And what have I been talking about? Gold. We say good morning here at Bloomberg Surveillance to Dennis Gartman, who has just had the call of the back half of the decade and into this year 2020 on gold. Gold in dollars shall move from the lower left to the upper right up to 1780. We got to 1796 earlier this morning. I'm sorry, Dennis, I failed. I don't know gold in yen. I don't know gold in euro. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Influential conversation.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most.
Hi, Mum.
From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. And the International Monetary Fund downgrading its outlook for the coronavirus-ravaged world economy, projecting a significantly deeper recession and slower recovery than it anticipated just 2 months ago. The fund said it now expected global gross domestic product to shrink 4.9% this year, more than the 3% predicted in April. For 2021, the fund forecast growth of 5.4%, down from 5.8%. U.S. futures are falling and European stocks slumping the most in a week as a resurgence in virus cases around the world sharpens concerns about the pace of the economic recovery. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 21 points, Dow futures down 226, NASDAQ futures down 27, the DAX in Germany is down 1.8%. 10-year Treasury down 132nd, yield 0.71%. The yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1% or 42 cents at $39.94 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.25% or $4.30 at $17.77.70 an ounce. The euro 1.1273 against the dollar. British pound 1.2483, and the yen is at 106.75. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom.
Karen, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate that. Good morning, everyone across the nation, and of course the changing stories that we've seen week after week in the pandemic. And there's nothing to be funny about. Today's stories are pretty grim. One of the people that's given us perspective throughout the good, the recovery, and now the greater difficulties that we've seen with the pandemic is Lauren Sauer with the Johns Hopkins University. Her expertise is in the emergency room and the preparedness for crisis within emergency rooms. Here's a comment from Lauren Sauer of Johns Hopkins.
I think that worst case scenario is that states continue to reopen and they don't have a reality check on what that means for these cases that are sweeping across the country. We're seeing broad increases in cases across the country, and states continue reopening activities. I heard someone say the other day that we're done with coronavirus, but coronavirus isn't done with us. And I think it's very true. People are going back to business as usual, and it's absolutely not business as usual right now.
Lauren, you are in critical preparedness. What have we learned about masks? Give me the straight story on masks.
Yeah, there still continues to be a lot of talk and a lot of politicalization about masks. And I think it's really, it's making it hard across the country to do the public health measures that we need. I mean, we're learning more and more about masks every day. We're seeing the efficacy. We're seeing that my mask protects you, that your mask protects me, and that all the masks protect the vulnerable people in our community, and that they're an important public health measure. When we still don't have a lot of options for we have no vaccine, we don't have a lot of therapeutics, masks are a critical tool in our toolkit.
Tell us, Lauren, about your thoughts on the demographics and the reality of a retired Florida. I believe the statistics are 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 people in Florida are over some advanced age like 39 or 49. I make a joke about it, but Lauren, this is really serious. There's a lot of old people down there. What's it mean?
Yeah, so Florida has a really vulnerable population. We know that the elderly are more affected. We know that a lot of people in Florida have multiple comorbidities. They're an aging population, and the cases are surging there. The social distancing activities that need to happen now. And I believe I saw recently that masking is starting to be encouraged in Florida. I think the governor mentioned something about it the other day. I can't remember exactly what he said, but I think the key is that these activities are important both for the general population that's in Florida, but also to protect this vulnerable population, to protect the people who are older, to protect the people who have comorbidities that mean that if they get COVID, that their case will be much worse.
Lauren, sometimes it's difficult to understand, the end game of this. Are we just trying to wait it out until we have a vaccine? Or is this about, trying to get some kind of herd immunity whilst at the same time giving our health services a break? I don't know how, what the optimal situation would be, what we're trying to achieve. I know we're trying to save lives, but how and for how long?
Yeah, we're trying to save lives for sure. And I think we're trying to protect the community and protect in particular the health system as we approach a vaccine. A vaccine is definitely the goal. I don't think herd immunity is a viable option. We'll get there eventually, but we will lose a lot of lives if we don't stay home, if we don't use masks, and we don't get a vaccine. We're still learning a lot about what the durable immunity looks like in patients who have recovered from COVID-19. The vaccine is definitely the target.
How long do we have to live with this vaccine, Lauren? One of the things that, we hear about on social media, or maybe just people just being frankly fed up of being in lockdown, is, they want to try and do something in the summer when the virus could potentially be less lethal than then come the fall.
And I think that there's a lot to learn about seasonality. So we're in probably our first season, I would say, of coronavirus. And so there is possibility, because we see it in other coronaviruses, that there may be a seasonality. The warmer weather may reduce the number of cases, but we also have a really susceptible population right now, since it's the first time we're ever being exposed to this. So I think the social distancing and the lockdown has to continue, at least in certain ways. Being outside is certainly safer than being inside. Being away from large crowds is safer than being with large crowds. So you can still get out and about while being really cautious and careful about your surroundings, and just, think about the risk. Think about, am I going to be in a huge crowd? Am I going to be outside or in a well-ventilated area? And those are the ways we can sort of bide our time until we get to that vaccine. Dr. Fauci said just yesterday that it is close, and we have some viable candidates.
Lawrence Sauer with terrific perspective there with the Johns Hopkins University. I urge all of you to listen to these experts. They've all got their different nuances, their different expertise, but there's some consistent messages there, to say the least. Futures at negative 24. Dow futures at negative 258. Let me give you those levels: 3095. On the Standard & Poor's 500, Dow futures 25,762. It has been a range market, except for, 7 selected big tech stocks, let's call it that, and maybe we'll talk gold in a minute. But within the range, you're at the top of the range, at the bottom of the range. We're somewhat near the bottom of the range today. I measure that off VIX, 32.55 up a stick. That's a little more fear in the market, a little more risk off. But I'd say the VIX 34. And 35 would be outside the range. I'm just eyeballing that. Right now, 32.55 on the VIX. The bond market tells me nothing this morning. Full faith and credit. Just simply doing nothing. A little bit of curve steepening. Again, it's fractional. And then we get to where it's interesting. Oil comes back $2 in the last 2 days. $39.73 American oil. Brent crude $41.90, off 1.7%. And gold is a big story, almost to 1,800 this morning, 1,796 on gold. We've had a nice morning pullback down $20 from that level, call it 1,776, the revolutionary price of gold. Please stay with us. Coast to coast, this is Bloomberg Radio. Good morning.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
This is a Bloomberg. Different adapts. Different overcomes. Different keeps moving. Different keeps thinking. Different stays connected. Different never stops dreaming. The University of Northampton invites you to a virtual open day for a taste of all the benefits of studying with us from this September. Search University of Northampton Virtual Open Days. It's the future, but different.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
Instruments to kids.
Art for walls.
Treats to pets. Shorts for sunny weekends.
To brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
I was offered one.
I was offered one. Were you?
Yeah, I was offered one too.
1 2 1 2. I was offered one.
I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
And good morning, I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene, and the opening bell brought to you by SEI. Visionary asset managers find opportunity where others are challenged. Exploit disruption's potential with SEI's global operating platform. Find out how at SEIC.com/IMS. The S&P 500 is lower at the open, down 0.7% or 22 points at 3108. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.9% or 237 points at 25,920. And the Nasdaq is down 1/3% or 36 points at 10,095. 10-year Treasury down 2/30 seconds, yield 0.71%. The yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.6% or 65 cents at 39.71 a barrel. COMEX gold down 1/3% or $6.60 at 17.75.40 an ounce. The euro 1.1269 against the dollar. The yen 106.77. Tom and Paul.
Thanks so much. Greatly appreciate that, Karen. Joining me now, Paul Sweeney, star of Stage and Screen. And Paul, before we get to our esteemed guest here, and you know, I know you overslept because you were so excited about the July 4th launch of a mega movie. That's not happening this summer.
That's not happening.
We're not doing.
It's interesting. The theaters are by and large closed. Some are reopening with masks. The drive-in theater's making a comeback, Tom. I know that's a big from your day. And but you know, the other thing, Tom, is production is shut down in all over the world, not just Hollywood. So there's not a lot of product here. So it's going to take a while for this industry to get kind of ramped up again. But there's certainly a lot of titles that have been delayed until we can get past this thing, and then they'll bring them back to the theaters.
Yeah, they're delayed, and they'll just redo them another time, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So, but the question is, will people go to the theaters, Tom? Will you go sit in the theater, and will you believe that your fellow theater goers will keep their masks on when the lights go down? Who knows?
What I noticed, Paul, and this is important, folks, and I can't remember. I'm going to say it was 5 years ago, but I don't think so. I think it was more like 8 years ago. The strangest thing happened, Paul. All of a sudden, my kids didn't want to go to the movie theater, and I couldn't figure it out. And it wasn't that it wasn't an age thing; it was a technology thing.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think what's happened here, Tom, with this pandemic and the fact that we've all been forced to kind of stay indoors, is we've developed some habits here, and these habits are, kind of all these streaming services and all the stuff that you get with all the new opportunities here, and people are just saying, "Do I need to go out and expose myself?"
Say good morning to all of you in Washington, in Boston, Bloomberg 1130 here in a beautiful summer day in New York, and of course across this nation, Bloomberg 960, the Bay Area, San Francisco. Good morning to you. In particular, good morning to all of you working from home. I get two opinions. When can I come back to the office and not?
Exactly right.
Those are the two opinions, and we just all we care, folks, is you listen. Whether you're at the office or work from home, we'll be happy if you get to the point where you want to be and listen to us here on Bloomberg Radio. Right now, we're going to listen to Marvin Lowe, State Street Senior Global Market Strategist. Well, Marvin, you've published your half-year view. What have you changed, or did you just throw in the State Street towel and say, we can't make it up here on a readjusted July 1? What do you do?
Well, I mean, I think you have to, really respect the trade and how we got here, and really maybe taking off the worst case that a lot of us were looking at the world in, kind of in the middle of of winter during this process. And liquidity, the Fed, and the fiscal part of the equation has really come through to help support risk assets. And you ultimately need to respect that and look at the second half of the year around that.
Have you worked out, and I don't want to go into will they do another stimulus or not do another stimulus, and I'm going to use the word defeasance here, sort of a bond phrase, folks. How does all this liquidity defease away over time? Because my answer is, am I right, Marvin, that it's going to be a lot longer stream of ample liquidity than we perceive?
You know what? I think there is. There's certainly the folks that believe that you need the flow of liquidity to keep markets buoyant, and certainly we saw that over the last couple of months. But I think the stock of liquidity is also important. There's just so much liquidity that can make its way around the world this time. Not necessarily just the Fed or just the ECB doing different things. It's everyone really trying to keep the stock pretty high. That is an important buoyant for kind of this risk discussion, in addition to the fact that you've got yields globally at a non-existent level.
So, Marvin, you think about the liquidity in this marketplace, as you mentioned, it's just been extraordinary. The Fed has done an exceptional job here, being early, being active, being aggressive, being consistent, even with their messaging here. Let's talk about valuation a little bit. We certainly have had an earnings issue here. We're going to see it again in a couple weeks with these second quarter earnings. Where are you on valuation here? How concerned are you about valuation, not just with the S&P 500, but just kind of across various sectors?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly am concerned. I'm a bond guy first and foremost, kind of from my old days. So, I'm always going to wind up on the conservative side of things. But kind of having said that, I think that second quarter earnings are another quarter where we're able to look through and look past, and it's really kind of the outlook for next year. One of the things that's been interesting to me is that while estimates haven't increased much over the last 5-6 weeks, price targets have risen by a large number. So kind of the way you get around that is multiple expansion, and there is a limit to that from the analyst perspective in terms of how quickly how wide you can expand those multiples.
How do you do, and I know you guys are a very large cap house, but you've got mid cap, small cap knowledge as well. What do you do with beleaguered small caps? And I guess the differential to large caps. On a relative basis, do they narrow the gap? On an absolute basis, at some point, do they just pop? Or are they a trap forever?
Yeah, I don't see them breaking out of the trap right now. I think you and I, Tom, have kind of talked about the growth dominance, the tech dominance, in kind of this still uncertain world. I think that kind of they have an advantage from not only their business models but their balance sheets, which again, from a bond guy perspective, is important.
All right, so Marvin, as a bond guy, yield curve control, what does that mean to you? Because that's kind of a new term for me over the last several weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it means certainly different things to different people because central banks have taken different approaches to it. I think what it would mean in the U.S. is the ability to get comfortable that the Fed's not going to do anything to raise rates until various targets are hit, and you can ultimately plan at least some of your discount dividend models or your CAPM models on kind of this lower type of yield environment until the economy gets to a point where you think that they can go higher. That gives you a lot of comfort in terms of like building out these kind of longer earnings models.
Well, how have you changed your allocation, or even better, what are you overweight right now?
You know what? So valuations being a concern, it certainly makes it harder. I think you do go back.
Whoa! What are you doing? Are you in the triple leveraged all cash fund?
I am still looking for income. I do think income is important in this world. So kind of with the Fed in the corporate bond space, I do think there's still spread compression that can come out of that. High yield certainly is wrought with concerns, but pick your companies carefully within that, and you're gonna produce some outperformance around there, and kind of lean back on the business models on the equity side of things that you feel comfortable with, which to me still winds up with a lot of these growth names, even though valuations do make it a little bit more challenging.
So Marvin, again, as a bond guy, how do you feel about the credit quality that we're seeing out there?
Yeah, so certainly we're seeing companies lever themselves up, and that does cause kind of longer term concerns. It does give me comfort that they have the ability to possibly get through a slower restart process, and ultimately, if financial conditions remain loose the way it seems that either a yield curve control type of discussion and or a very liquid market provides you with, you can get past that. But certainly the business models have to justify the amount of debt we're talking about.
This has been valuable. Marvin Lowe, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it with State Street today. Some strategy there. We're seeing all sorts of pieces come out on, end of second half. And I got to admit, Paul, it's the biggest non-event I've ever seen in my career between the pandemic and what the economics are doing. See the IMF and Gita Gopinath. How can you make a year-end, a midterm review? Come on.
Exactly right, Tom. I just don't think people have a real sense of kind of how this is going to play out.
We're going through the motions.
We're going through.
We never do that. We never do that with the news, though. With our news in Washington, not going through the motions. Amy Morris.
Thank you, Tom. U.S. Infectious Diseases Chief Anthony Fauci and other health officials have not spoken with President Trump in more than 2 weeks, but they have been talking to lawmakers. Fauci was on Capitol Hill with a recommendation to keep wearing masks.
Everyone agrees in the public health sector that wearing of masks is beneficial. It may not be perfect. As we often say, wear it and don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It is always better to have a mask on than to not have a mask on, both for acquisition and for transmission.
We are seeing surges of the virus now in Texas, California, Florida, and other states. Former President Barack Obama helped raise a record-breaking $7.6 million from more than 175,000 individual donors in a grassroots fundraiser for Joe Biden. Biden has now opened up his biggest polling lead of the campaign, 50% to Donald Trump's 36%. That, according to the latest national New York Times Siena College poll. The Senate is headed toward a standoff on an attempt to legislate an overhaul of U.S. policing practices. Democratic Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois says the Republican plan is just too narrow and that Democrats want a stronger bipartisan bill.
You look at the Republican language, it is a lot weaker than the Democratic language. And it really calls on the Attorney General. How would you like to turn to him at this moment in history? Calls on the Attorney General to define what's excessive use of force.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has locked in a vote for today to begin debate on the GOP drafted measure, with promises it could be amended. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Tom and Paul.
Amy, thanks so much. Paul, is the festivities over at the Apple conference? Was that like a one-day announcement of stuff I don't care about, like chips and widgets and
there wasn't a whole lot there for the rank and file here. It was mostly for the tech/app/chip community there. So you didn't get your new iPhone, Tom. You didn't get an upgrade on the iPad or the Mac. So there's, for people like you and me that just kind of are looking for the next new cool thing coming out of Cupertino, we didn't get much.
Paul. We're not looking for the next new thing. Those surrounding us are looking for the next new thing.
That's right.
But I guess we didn't see it. Apple up 18 days in a row or whatever the statistic is. Let me do a data check. I'll do a complete data check. I'll pretend to be Karen Moscow, which I can only pretend to do because there is only one Karen Moscow. Right. Dow negative 218. We're open for trading 25,937. Standard & Poor's make it 0.6%, lower 18 points. NASDAQ 100, I don't get it. It's green on the screen. Not by much. I'm not going to speak, Paul, until the NASDAQ goes red.
Right.
Exactly. That's a joke, folks.
And it's
some of you probably wish the NASDAQ would go red. The VIX 32.03 up almost a point. As well. In the bond market, a churn to the market today. Gold again up near 1,800. Earlier, 1,776 the ounce. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Fifth Avenue just doesn't have the ring it used to have. With the high foot traffic gone and the prime real estate with it, luxury fashion retailer Valentino is now suing to get out of its 15-year lease, arguing it would be struggling long after the pandemic subsides to make the rent. Howard University sued a South Carolina couple to recover a drawing by renowned African-American artist Charles White. The historically black university said the work, Centralia Madonna, valued by Sotheby's at $300,000 to $500,000, disappeared from its collection in the 70s. It only resurfaced in May when Sotheby's contacted the school about the work's provenance ahead of its planned inclusion at an American art auction. Russian tycoon Vitaly Malkin can't prove he owns a $35 million ski chalet in France, but he still has to pay the taxes on it. The case is one of several related to a 3% French levy designed to prevent the wealthy from getting out of paying France's traditional wealth tax via shell companies. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Jenny Liss, Jewish communal leader and philanthropist, talks about why she chose the Jewish Communal Fund for her family's charitable giving.
For a lot of people, it would be the convenience factor. I don't have to track anything.
If charitable giving is an important part of your life, JCF can help you organize your philanthropy with our donor-advised fund. A fund can be established with a minimum tax-deductible contribution of $5,000. Make grants to your favorite charities, and JCF handles all the administration and reporting.
At the year end, our board awards community grants from fees and endowment income to UJ's annual campaign. We also make gifts to specific organizations, the elderly, Holocaust survivors, the hungry. The fact that we come together as a community at the end of the year to build community, that's what makes us different.
Get better at giving back. To find out more about JCF's impact, visit jcfny.org and download the Giving Report. JCF, we have a gift for giving.
Global news, 24 hours.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Wednesday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we're smart to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find belter solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
Lines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stocks are falling. European equities slumping the most in a week as the Trump administration considered fresh tariffs and a resurgence in virus cases around the world, sharpened concern about the pace of the economic recovery. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P 500 is down 0.75% on 24 points at 3107. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 1.1% or 274 points at 25,880, and the Nasdaq down 0.25% or 23 points at 10,106. The 10-year Treasury up 1/32, the yield 0.70%, the yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.4% on 58 cents at 39.79 a barrel. COMEX gold is little changed, up $1.30 at 17.8340 an ounce. The euro 1.1274 against the dollar, the yen 106.75. And the U.S. is weighing new tariffs on $3.1 billion of exports from France, Germany, Spain, and the U.K., adding to an arsenal the Trump administration is threatening to use against Europe that could spiral into a wider transatlantic trade fight later this summer. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thank you so much. Gina Martin Adams joins us now, and usually with Gina Martin Adams, we're doing bigger, broader. But I had a wonderful letter come in, an email come in rather, that had a real simple question. Gina Martin Adams, a toothpaste company is as boring as they get. They grow at, decent revenue, 3, 4, 5, 7% is a big year. They have dividend growth if they're, 4, 5% dividend growth. Maybe they pay a 1, maybe a 2% dividend. How come they're trading at a multiple of 29? I'm getting a lot of inquiries about this. Forget about Apple. Forget about, Hertz and retail roulette machine, whatever it is. A boring toothpaste company trades at a nifty 50 multiple with those kind of ratios. Why?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good question. My first answer is all stocks are trading at elevated multiples because you get nothing for bonds. So when you're looking at yields sub 50 basis points across most maturities in the bond market, you're not getting paid to own bonds. At the same time, we've seen spreads tighten so much in the credit market that still roughly 3/4 of the equity market is cheaper than the credit. So I think that's a lot of the explanation. Now, then you have the elevation in defensive plays. Like, just go back to the toothpaste company as your perfect example of a defensive play. You have extraordinary elevation in the multiples of defensive plays because while investors are getting dragged into equities because of the relative risk premium that's available in equities in comparison to bond markets, right, they don't want to take on a tremendous amount of risk yet. And so you're seeing something of a pile into extraordinarily defensive sort of strategies, like the consumer staples of the world, to a lesser extent the healthcare and technology companies of the world.
Folks, joining us now on Bloomberg Radio, Paul Sweeney, who with Gina Martin Adams understands the shell game. Paul, would you explain to me what the boards and managements of said toothpaste companies should do, trading at a 29 multiple?
Issue stock, I would argue.
Issue stock, sell the damn thing. What do they do?
Yeah, that's kind of, as a former investment banker, whenever you see somebody up there, you say, boy, this is a rich valuation. If you need cash, particularly in these times, maybe sell equities, you sell some equity here. And we have seen that. We have seen some companies do that as they shore up the balance sheet. But Gina, here, you kind of raised the question, Tom's in his triple leverage all cash fund, and he's been dying to get into the market here.
No, I'm not.
But I can't get him into these defensive names at, 23 times earnings. I mean, where does a person go? Where does an investor go if they want to get some equity exposure here? Maybe because we can look out to the other side of this pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is you have to be willing as an investor to look out to the other side. And I think that's the problem, is that the investment universe is very reticent to do so. They're living in the now as opposed to living in the what will things look like in 12 or 24 months. That's very characteristic of a recession experience, but when we're dealing with potential for, future economic shutdowns, a lot of uncertainty with respect to how consumers are going to behave in a coronavirus sort of ridden world, investors are very, very hesitant to take on risk. However, if you're willing to take on risk, then you've still got 2/3 of stocks in the S&P 500 that are trading below their 5-year average valuations. And I think that's the key, is look for reasonable valuations with growth prospects that you can generally predict, at least predict with some degree of certainty, as opposed to the high flyers, I think, where the risk is still extremely high. They may be discounted, but they're discounted for a reason. And it's not an easy proposition, without a doubt. I do think that's one of the reasons why investors have piled into the technology stories and the communication stocks, because these are the companies where you have relatively predictable price patterns or relatively predictable earnings patterns going into the future. You do have to pay up for that predictable pattern, but you do also see the growth prospect. And you've got to find those values in some of the other beaten down areas of the index right now. That's largely priced. What's next is the big question. Where is the growth going to come from in the next 12 to 24 months? And what's your relative certainty that growth is going to actually come to fruition?
So, it's interesting here because we're going to have the second quarter coming up, Gina. How should investors look at this? Is this something we're just going to look completely past, or can we learn some things in what's going to be an ugly, ugly second quarter earnings season?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think for the most part, you look past current results. I mean, we know that the index is going to produce a record decline in earnings on a year-ago basis. The analyst community is expecting a greater than 40% decline. It's something we just haven't seen in our lifetime in terms of earnings. What we really need to watch for, though, are the companies that are talking about how they're adjusting for the future and what that future really looks like. Because the companies who are on the ground dealing with consumer behavior in real time will give us some sense of, especially in the month of June, as the lockdowns were eased to some degree. Right. What is the consumer doing? What are businesses doing? Is there really any strong supply chain migration, which a lot of people are concerned about going forward? How are we contending with this sort of constraints of supply and demand, and how does that look into the future? Those are the kind of questions that we need to ask. And importantly, the biggest part of second quarter earnings season is going to be estimate revision into 2021. Are we going to see analysts start to move their estimates a little bit higher? Because, as you know, that's what we think is the single most important factor to watch for the next leg higher in stocks to emerge.
Gina Martin Adams, thank you so much. At Bloomberg Intelligence, running all our equity coverage. I thought that was great on the toothpaste conundrum, if you will. The conundrum is prices lower. Usually when Gina Martin Adams comes on, we see the Dow fade. It's faded. SPX down 35 points. Dow down 340 points, 1.3%, and the VIX comes back out. Two big figures, 33.44 as well. Gold up big, and then has pulled back through the morning, 17.83 on gold. It gave up all those gains of earlier. We are produced in New York City by Richard Truman. Please stay with us through the day. This is Bloomberg Radio. Good morning. Hey, y'all.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Wednesday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.